the conversation starts to take shape.
Thanks, Steve.
And then let's see, who else do we have here? So I guess Jason Sun, who's also he's an intern with the National Operations Center. He's also participating, kind of a listen-only or a monitoring capacity. And it looks like on the attendee side, we have one individual so far from Wisconsin DOT. Looks like Jessica Felix, and we may have a couple of other individuals come in as we start to get into the conversation over the next couple hours, just in a listen-only capacity. But the intent for this virtual peer exchange is to kind of keep the audience a little bit more limited, to try to foster a little bit more open, hopefully candid dialogue on some of the issues that you all face as practitioners in the TSMO community. And as we start to talk a little bit more on some of the capability maturity model work that gets done, I think the group today is sort of the right size to give us that open dialogue to really make this a productive use of everybody's time. So with that, one thing I have, again, shared with you all so far, let me unpause my screen here. I sent this out yesterday for review, but this is the overall design document for the virtual peer exchange today. And so the general topic is learning from the capability maturity model. And you all, as individual agency representatives, are here today because your agencies have had some participatory role in the capability maturity model evaluation process that FHWA has been doing over the last couple of years as part of the Sharptooth program. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have sat in on one or more regional operations forums that have been part of that evaluation process. And I think we're really here today to hear from each other as far as what have been your experiences so far within that CMM space. Understand and try to understand, you know, you've approached this question of CMM evaluation. You know, what challenges have you had? Where have you maybe learned some things about your agency and its capabilities that maybe you didn't know before? I think we're going to get a little bit into some specific application areas, potentially using the CMM. And then finally, to wrap up, looking at where do we go from here with the CMM. As I'm sure many of you have been through this evaluation process, you start to think about, you know, is this something that I can use within my agency going forward to improve, you know, overall strengths and capabilities in various areas. And we'd like to just have some dialogue on what are some of those thoughts and paths forward that you all have defined and can share with each other, and get some great ideas to take back for use in your own agencies. So run through this kind of quickly here, but the brief description is basically just what I said. So the three areas that we're going to touch on today are in the bullet points there. The target audience for this, it's pretty wide-reaching. I think it's really anybody who is involved in TSMO-related work, especially at the local and regional agency level. I know we have a couple of state DOT folks on today. I know you probably work very closely with the particular regions that your offices are located in, and then the MPOs, and maybe even individual cities. And I think just having that perspective and then trying to understand as we get down to more of that local and small scale level, maybe how do some of these challenges, you know, maybe how are they a little bit different than some stuff that we might think of on a larger, like a statewide scale, and you know, how do these uniquely impact the regions and the clientele, so to speak, that you all are representing and are engaging in work to benefit. So let's see, learning objectives. I've kind of gone through all those. I mean, it's really my hope that at the end of today, you all will have some good takeaways, some new perspectives, maybe even some good ideas as far as new approaches that you all might be able to pursue within your agencies to help support continued development and work with the capability maturity model as you develop your TSMO program plans and strategic planning. And yeah, I think just having this open dialogue to share some of the experiences and best practices and lessons learned goes a long way towards enhancing that knowledge management, knowledge transfer experience, as opposed to just endless webinars or PDFs that you read online. Those are useful, but I think a lot of value can be found as well in just having this open, engaging dialogue on these topics. So as far as participants, kind of run through these already. So myself, I'll be serving as the overall moderator for the peer exchange today. I mentioned that we have Les on hand from kind of providing some of that ITE TSMO Council perspective, and then the individual agencies we're happy to have participating. We've got folks from NITEC. I don't know that we have, is anyone on yet from Broward County or Florida DOT? Okay, they may be coming a little bit later, but hopeful that we can get some experience, some perspective as well from Broward County, Florida, in particular District 4. The Florida DOT has been working to support that particular region. We also have folks on hand today from La Crosse, Wisconsin area, as well as the Wisconsin DOT, Aztec and the Maricopa County, Phoenix, Arizona region, providing some perspective. And then finally, a little bit more of a Midwest, Southern Midwest region perspective from Kansas DOT and the Wichita, Kansas area. So I think it's a good diversity of perspectives across a good variety of geographic regions, and I'm hoping some of those differences in perspectives and maybe even pressing issues within your particular jurisdiction will lend some good diversity and valuable perspectives to the discussion today. So as far as the schedule itself goes, it's pretty loose, I think open, and we tried to make this as unstructured as we can while still maintaining some sense of organization to kind of keep the conversation flowing. So for the first 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes or so here, I'm going to just spend on kind of doing what I am now and going over logistics and welcome and intro. We'll spend the next hour and 20 minutes or so going around to the individual agencies participating on the call today to share some of your experiences so far with the capability maturity model and the CMM evaluation process. So both past and present experiences. I know a couple folks did send me PowerPoint slides. As far as the logistics for those go, we're pretty flexible with that. For those of you who did send me some slides, I can pull those up on my screen and we can run through those, and you just need to let me know when to move to the next slide. If there are folks who have slides that want to present from your end, I'm happy to give you control of the screen and you can run through things on your side. Even if you don't have any slides, love if you could take maybe 10 or 15 minutes, no more than about 15 minutes, just to give some background perspective and give everyone an initial sense of where you all have been so far with the CMM evaluation process and maybe where you're currently at and maybe in the very short term where you're looking to go in the future. So after we do that, the first official session that we'll be doing will be focusing a little bit more on specific elements from the CMM evaluation process so far and really drilling down on some of those lessons learned and some of those experiences that you've all had in the process thus far. And this is really where I'm hoping we can get into some of the brainstorming and the open dialogue. And one thing that I'm hopeful will come out of the conversation for today is some additional perspective that we can share with FHWA as they are in the process of wrapping up their reassessment work associated with the CMM evaluation. And I know that they've been hard at work at doing this reassessment and revisiting over the last couple of months, and they're working to get that process wrapped up, in August and I think September as well. And so, I think one potential value of the conversation today can be a little bit more of that open dialogue that can support some of the conclusions that they're working to develop as far as the success and the effectiveness of the CMM evaluation process. So we'll do that until about 3 o'clock, maybe a few minutes after 3. We'll take a 15-minute break. Folks can stand up, stretch your legs, use the restroom, do whatever you want on your end. And then the last hour and a half or so, we'll hit 2 additional topics. When we had spoken a couple weeks ago, I know there was some interest in pursuing a little bit more of a topic-specific focus area, and I just kind of decided that we'd look at integrated corridor management with a particular interest to a lot of folks on the call today. I know some of you have done some work within ICM. Some of you are just now starting to consider doing some integrated corridor management efforts within your agencies. So we'll, similar to session 1, we'll share some experiences with that, answer questions, just have some more of that back and forth dialogue on how to best accomplish the objectives around successful integrated corridor management. I think probably arterial management in general seems to be oftentimes a big component of ICM discussion that doesn't get maybe quite as much attention as freeway operations. Some of that limited access control tends to garner. So we'll do that, and then the last session will be focused on looking forward with the CMM. So by the time we come to this 3rd session, I'm hopeful that we'll all have a good sense of where each other is at with respect to the CMM evaluation process and maybe some of the more general programmatic areas that your agencies have been focusing on within TSMO. And we can spend some time at the end to talk about, over the next year, 6 months to a year to maybe even 5 to 10 years down the road, where you all see your agencies heading with the CMM evaluation process, and get some more ideas and get some more dialogue going on some potential opportunities to consider in this space. And then the last 15 minutes or so, we'll just do some closing remarks and wrap up. So I'm gonna pause there. And does anyone have any questions on the overall focus for the peer exchange today? Any questions around logistics, organization, or anything like that? Please let me know now.
Hey, Steve, this is Les. One thing I'd like to just encourage all of the panelists to do is, as you're thinking about your CMM experiences, I think it'd be very interesting for you to mention how things are going with your implementation plan. What things have you been able to do? Perhaps where you've struggled in getting through your implementation plan from the CMM workshops, and then what you see beyond perhaps what was done for that CMM process that you went through, and how do you see furthering TSMO. That kind of gets into session 1 as well, but if we can cover some of those as a basic about what were your implementation plan elements and how have things progressed since that time, I think that might help provide everyone with kind of an understanding of where we all are at this point.
Yep, absolutely. And that's a great point to reiterate, Les. I appreciate that. And I think you're right. I think that'll touch on a number of these different topics of discussion today. But I think that's one of the big values, like I said before, and in these peer exchanges and the open dialogue is, it's not just the case studies or the best practices and what works super well. I mean, I think as much value is had in talking through some of the challenges and maybe unexpected aspects of the CMM evaluation process and things that can be good takeaways for other agencies who may be just starting down this process of evaluating the strength of their own TSMO programs and actually implementing some of these different recommended strategies. So that's worth saying many times over. A couple other, I guess, logistical items to be cognizant of. So we are recording the session today. Normally what we've done with these virtual peer exchanges is we've recorded the sessions. You know, we want to keep the conversation today, this live conversation, to a smaller, more limited group of people. But we do typically record these, and we make them available publicly for viewing on our YouTube channel after the fact. So we'll be doing that. And then the other thing is, as far as audio goes, I just ask if you're not speaking that you try to keep your audio line muted, and that just reduces echoes and other. I'm sure you've all been on webinars where someone didn't have their line muted, and you get all kinds of weird feedback going on. And then the other thing is, as part of today's virtual peer exchange, so I'm going to be working with Nilu, our other staff member here, to be compiling kind of a highlights document associated with the peer exchange, and kind of focusing on some of those big picture discussion items that come out of the conversation today. And we'll be working to put that together over the next couple of weeks after this VPE wraps up, and we can share that all with you for some internal review, and then maybe some cleanup and iteration. And then we'll also post this on our website for viewing along with the recording. So with that, looks like we may have one additional participant. Jonathan, this is Steve Lavrens. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, Allison Glunt and I are here in District 4.
Perfect. Happy to have you guys on board. So I was just going through a couple of other logistical items, and we just finished walking through the agenda, and I think now we're going to go ahead and just start with the short agency presentations on your CMM experiences, and then we'll after that dive into more of the open discussion topics.
Sounds good.
So, with that, if it's all right with everyone, I'm actually just going to go through this list alphabetically. So for better or worse, looks like Angela, if you and Tom would be willing to go first. Looks like you guys are first on the list here alphabetically. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I do have that short PowerPoint presentation. Would you be able to walk me through how I start sharing that?
Yeah, let me give you control of the screen here. So you should be seeing a request on your end right now to take control.
All right, can you see that?
Yes.
Or no?
Yep, we can see your screen, and so now you've got full control if you want to pull up that PowerPoint, and you can start walking through it.
All right, well, thank you for asking us to be a part of this presentation. We're definitely hoping to learn some things.
Angela, real quick.
Yep, go ahead.
If it looks like we're viewing the presenter mode on your screen, if you could go up to display settings at the top.
Yes.
And then do swap presenter view and slideshow.
Is that good?
Give it one sec here. Yep, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. So now I just wanted to kind of give a brief summary of a little bit about lacrosse and some of the history related to how we got to determining we wanted to try to do a CMM here. And then Tom's going to chime in on some of the activities the MPO has been involved with a little bit, and hopefully we can give you some insights into some of our challenges that we have here in this community, and how we're trying to figure out solutions for those challenges. So the city of La Crosse is along the Mississippi River in Wisconsin. We do have a very short area that is between the Mississippi River, and we have bluffs then on the other side where pretty much the main part of the city of La Crosse is. So there's location of where we're at, we do have the Interstate 90 that does run north of the city of La Crosse. We do have quite a bit of residential population that lives to the north of La Crosse, with the city kind of being south of I-90. The population of La Crosse, like I said in the beginning slide there, is only about 52,000 people. The overall metropolitan area, though, is about 135,000 people. So since probably 20 years ago, we've been trying to work on better traffic movements, moving into La Crosse and out of La Crosse. As we talked before, there's a lot of residential, and now it's grown to be more commercial in the northern part of the community. And we've had some challenges with those north-south movements. We have quite a few intersections that function at a level service F, and they have for years. We have just a lot of people coming in the morning, going out in the afternoons, and trying to add capacity is difficult because of the terrain that we live in. We also have a marsh that is in between the two areas of the communities that has a lot of interest and is a lot of recreational area for the community to use. So it's very sensitive as an area of not wanting to have any disturbance in that location. There's been several ideas and planning studies that have been gone through to try and determine how do we look at this area, the area's arterial system collectively, and try to improve the overall movement of goods and services in and out. For many years, we still haven't been able to kind of wrap that up and come to a final solution on how to address the needs. So having TSMO come along in the last few years, I was provided the opportunity to go to the Operations Academy a few years ago and get some insight into what the CMM was. And when I came back from that opportunity, a few of our other team members at Wisconsin DOT were able to go as well, and they were able to help us get a grant from Federal Highways to have someone come in and facilitate a CMM process with us. So that process was a couple of years ago now, almost a couple of years ago, October 29th of 2015. We did have DOT staff there, we had MPO staff, we had two of the larger cities attend that, we had emergency management there, law enforcement, and even a senator's office took interest. And that's mainly because of some of the challenges we've had to try and address the needs in the community. The legislative side has taken an interest and wanted to stay involved in a lot of the discussions. It was a full day self-evaluation of our area, working with these parties to all provide input. After that day of evaluation from the CMM process, this is where we kind of felt like we landed. Really, it's in that level 1 and level 2. We ended up somewhat separating some things out in that some things maybe the local agencies were struggling a little bit more than Wisconsin DOT was. And I think, with Wisconsin DOT having some introduction to what TSMO was, we had started an agency-wide program to look at TSMO and how we could better implement some of the practices. So that probably gave us just a slight step ahead of where we are. But with this actual workshop, we are really just looking at the La Crosse area and trying to better integrate our systems at the department with the systems that are going on at the local agencies and with the MPO. So even though WISDOT had some very basic knowledge, this CMM was really the first exposure a lot of these local agencies had to this type of a process, and that the CMM existed even. At the end of that day, we did have evaluations that were handed out, and everyone felt like it was a good exercise to have gone through. We walked away from those meetings, and Federal Highways had worked with us to develop a final document from the workshop, kind of sharing our strengths and weaknesses in each of the CMM areas, and some of the opportunities for us to move into that next level. And so that document I still keep very close to my desk, and we were lucky enough to have Tom here kind of hearing what a lot of the local agencies are saying and a lot of the local elected officials are saying, that they really want to try to maximize TDM things and TSMO things in the community before we even start thinking about any sort of additional lanes or capacity. So I'll let Tom go with one of the things that he's been able to do since that discussion in 2015.
Thank you, Angela. This is Tom Fiala. I'm the executive director here at the Lacrosse Area Planning Committee. And as Angela mentioned, we at the MPO here don't get real involved in the technical or engineering side. Our role, as far as that area of TSMO goes, is really to bring to everyone's attention the importance of working together. We have a lot of our signals that are managed by different entities, and out of this exercise really came the desire to maybe centralize some of that signal coordination for better efficiencies, and really having all the agencies work together. But as far as what we can accomplish at the MPO level, we have a pretty robust TDM process that we're going into and have been working on most of this year. We put together a transportation demand management plan where we had a series of workshops and meetings amongst the policymakers and agency staff for the area. And we got together with, as it says here, our villages, cities, towns, businesses, DOT, and we've developed a series of next steps which were based upon activities that the various communities and entities came up with on their own through these facilitated meetings, and have indicated that they would be able to work on or implement over the next couple of years. So we've analyzed that, got that all together into a TDM plan, and we are trying to implement those ideas now, and our plan is really to monitor that implementation and produce a status report in 2018. The other thing I'll mention is we are sort of the center for performance measurement in the area as required by FHWA. So we're kind of in that process now where the performance measures are coming out, and we're looking at them. The PM2 and PM3 with the congestion and the asset management are still underway, but we hope to be sort of the centralized focus for that effort. So, you know, we recognize that this is very important, and we're trying to work with DOT as much as possible to get some actual implementation.
All right. So just knowledge we'd like to gain probably from some of the ideas that are shared here. How have other areas used the process and been able to move it forward? And how are you increasing your buy-in? How do you best engage your strategic partners? And just talk about funding people use to try and accomplish certain things. So that's just some of our suggestions we're kind of hoping to get out of today. And there's just Tom and my contact information in case that would be helpful later. Does that handle what you guys are looking for? Do you have any immediate questions?
No, that's great, Angela and Tom. I really appreciate this, and especially, you know, I think explaining or clarifying some of what you're hoping to get out of the event today. Yeah, I mean, does anyone else on the phone or on the webinar or the VP have questions at this point for Tom or Angela? Okay, well, I'm sure we're going to have a lot more opportunity to come back and during the open discussion to revisit some of these issues. So thanks again, Angela and Tom, for that. Athena, if we can move over to you next, is that you ready to go?
Yes, and I do have some slides too, if you can show me how to share them.
Yeah. I'm going to make you the presenter.
Okay.
Right now. So you should be getting a request to take control of the screen.
Okay. Do you see anything?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Okay. Is it there?
Yeah, I can see your screen, your slides, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So what I first thought would be best to do was to talk a little bit about NITEC to give people an understanding of who we are first. I think that's going to be helpful. So NITEC stands for the Niagara International Transportation Technology Coalition. It was a coalition that was established in the Buffalo, Niagara region to help with kind of facilitating some traffic issues cross-border. So let me just get to the next slide. Do you see a picture of the map? That's our region. So we cover the Buffalo metropolitan area, but also go as far east as almost Rochester, New York, and then down to the Pennsylvania state line and into southern Ontario. Basically, we cover kind of the St. Catharines area in Ontario. There's 3 international border crossings within our region as well, and there's a lot of uniqueness to the area, weather events that we kind of get involved in. So NITEC was established back in 1995 through a federal mobility grant, and really the mission was to improve mobility through the binational region through, information sharing, coordinated management of operations. So we really are the regional kind of leader when it comes to collaborating with the agencies. So we get involved in technology deployment, operations, incident management, and then also dissemination of traveler information to the traveling public, the media, and so forth in the region. So our membership has grown. So initially we were 14 member agencies. It was really the Department of Transportation for New York State. We have a thruway authority in the state as well, the Ministry of Transportation Ontario, some of our primary members. And then we've grown that over the years and broke into kind of a tiered structure where we have 5 policy members. They make kind of the decisions brought forth. And then we have general members, we call them, and then affiliate members. That's where we've added a lot of members over the years into this affiliate member category. That's some of the transportation agencies, the smaller agencies in the region, a lot of the counties, public safety like U.S. Customs, Canadian Customs, a lot of the recovery services, the towing agencies, AAA. University of Buffalo, we work very closely with them, the local MPO here in the region. Just a lot of those agencies are kind of all a part of NITEC. And how we're governed is we have a board of directors, they meet quarterly, they provide overall policy and governance to the NITEC, and then we have a committee structure which meets on a regular basis. And those committees are represented by the different agencies. So on our border crossing committee, we've got U.S. Customs, Canadian Customs, the transportation agencies as well, the bridge operators. There's 2 primary bridge operators for the international crossings here. They sit on that committee, and we have work plans, we have initiatives we work on every year. We reevaluate those and kind of keep progress going. So we have a good structure in place that brings all of the agencies together to kind of meet and talk through issues. Incident management being a big part, that's where we bring a lot of the, state police, provincial police, local police, fire, recovery to the table and kind of talk through and how do we all work together closely. Some of the committees, a newer committee we added a few years ago, which is a Regional Traffic Signals Committee, and we'll see some of the CMM efforts. We're kind of focusing on that aspect. So that's kind of how we're structured. Here's just some of the functions we get involved in here. Really multi-agency collaboration. It's bringing kind of everyone to the table on a neutral ground to work together. Traveler information, border crossing information, special event planning if there's kind of a large event here in the Buffalo region or even in Southern Ontario or even in Toronto that is going to impact the region and cross-border traffic. We get involved in that, try to bring everyone to the table, plan ahead of time so that we're not kind of caught off guard with a lot of traffic congestion in the area, and how do we mitigate that and prepare for it. And then we get involved in a lot of performance measures reporting because we collect a lot of this data that's related to whether it's an incident, whether it's a weather event, construction. We get a lot involved in all the construction events in the region. So we report on that and make that data available to the agencies for their use as they need it. And then we work really closely with our MPO here in the region and just collaborate on, you know, how can we improve things and what projects we go after different grants together. So. But one of the unique things is we do operate a 24/7 operations center on behalf of the agencies. So we have their ITS elements, all their equipment in the region comes into a central location here at NITEC, and then we operate them on their behalf. Some of the agencies operate their equipment in addition to us, but we kind of have that overview, kind of a holistic approach of what's going on in the whole region, not just specific to a specific agency's roadways. And that helps us kind of standardize our messaging, standardize how we're doing things in the region, whether it's the messaging on the overhead message signs. You know, one of the things, the roadways are owned and operated by different agencies, but the message signs might be used for a different agency's roadway with a message that might impact them. So just trying to standardize that so it kind of looks seamless within the region. We're kind of known as the clearinghouse, so if there's a big incident going on, local police, state police, they call us and then we help get the information out. We help to get the other agencies involved. If you need DOT or you need the thruway, whoever you need, we help get them involved in the situation. So that way they're not trying to have to remember to call all the different people and make sure everyone's involved. They just call our one number and we help get that information out. So when it came time to, you know, we were kind of told about this Sharptooth program and we applied for it. It just seemed to make sense. Like, how can we look at how we operate here in the region? How can we and take some steps to advance that, use some funding to do that? So back in 2014, we held what we called a senior leadership meeting where we brought in kind of the senior leaders at our agencies, primarily the lead agencies, the policy members of NITEC and some of the larger agencies, brought them together to talk through this process, kind of give an overview of the workshop we were going to do, just give them kind of a high-level review of the dimensions on capability and kind of discuss it. We brought in the Assistant Commissioner for the New York State Department of Transportation, who was kind of talking just in general some of DOT's kind of emphasis areas they wanted to look at, because one of the things in this region here, NITEC acts as DOT, New York State Department of Transportation's Operations Center. So they don't have their own Operations Center here. We are their Operations Center for them. So they want, you know, they're a big player in the part of this, so wanted to make sure they were involved. So we held that, got the senior leaders kind of up to speed on this process, and then the next day we held our self-assessment workshop. We had about 25 attendees from our agencies and really went through all the dimensions, kind of scored ourselves, which was interesting, you know, to hear different people's perspective on how we felt we should score each other. You know, in most of the dimensions we scored between 2s and 3s, just depend on, you know, what we felt, you know, where we were lacking. And then we came up with a large list of priority, you know, action items. I think there was maybe 30, 40 action items, and then tried to narrow that down and come out with some priority actions. Obviously, we couldn't, you know, take all the actions and try to move those forward, so we prioritized them. So we came up with 7 action items, and in September we brought that to the NITEC Board of Directors and just made sure they adopted our implementation plan and the action items and how we were moving forward, and then how that then got intertwined into kind of the day-to-day, the committees of NITEC, our initiatives we were working on at the work plans for the committees. It kind of just got their approval to move forward and kind of ingrain this in further and move forward with these action items. So those were some of our initial steps that we took. And then I thought what I'd do is just take a step through and kind of give an overview of just a little bit of the 7 action items, some of the outcomes we were looking to accomplish, and then the status of where we are today. So under the business process, one of the things we wanted to do was seek kind of greater opportunities where we were working with the local MPO and even state and provincial-wide in their planning processes. NITEC gets more involved in the day-to-day operations of the system here, but how do we get kind of pulled back out into the planning aspect? So one of the things we thought we would do was kind of document the process. How do we do that? How do we participate in that planning level? And how do we move forward? So we didn't use any of the funds that we received under the Sharptooth grant, but what we did is we've kind of established a working process where I work real closely with our MPO, and we have received a couple ICM grants, one from FHWA, one from a state agency, and we're using those to kind of, we're collaborative working together to kind of build what that process should be and developing a plan based on that. So we're kind of learning as we're going in that process. That project is going to be wrapping up probably early next year, and then we're going to develop a plan of how it worked, which has been working very well. We have bi-weekly calls with the consultant on our project for this and how do we progress this, and the information is brought both to the MPO, kind of their level of meetings, and then intertwined into some of our committee meetings and what kind of action items we might need to come out of that related to our ICM project. So that's the one action item which is progressing along. We had 2 of them under systems and technology. The first one was to increase our participation in the statewide and province-wide kind of the software and systems discussion and decision making. A lot of times things happen at a state level that are then kind of forced down into the region, or a province level then brought back down into kind of the regional aspect. So how do we get involved in that process or in some of those discussions, just so, a lot of times at the planning level they're not, all aware of kind of NITEC and what we do and how we collaborate and work together with everybody. So we've started to hold quarterly meetings, kind of discuss how to get more involved in when some of those decisions are made. That way, when it comes down to a regional level, we're kind of already plugged in, and we also bring in any kind of discussion at a committee meeting that we might need. So that process has been kind of moving forward. Again, no funding was needed for this. It's just something that's part of kind of the day-to-day that NITEC does with our committees. We've kind of ingrained into that process. The next one was to look at to optimally operate arterials. We do a good job in the region with the freeway management. That system's been built up over the years, but now starting to take a look at the arterials and how can we make some improvements? How can we work closer together with maybe some of the local municipalities, or even just at the city of Buffalo level? It's unique in this region. So if NITEC covers a 4-county region in western New York, but if we just look at 2 of the main counties, there's almost 1,800 signals in those 2 counties. And most of them are operated and owned by the New York State Department of Transportation, about 850 of them. The city of Buffalo has about 600 of them. And the rest are kind of between 35 different agencies and municipalities. So it's a lot of people, a lot of agencies involved in signal management. And how do we kind of get our arms around that? How do we start looking at, cross-jurisdictional boundaries and keeping traffic flow going? So one of the things the NITEC Regional Signals Committee, which we formed a few years ago to help start tackling this and start looking at this, one of the things we've discovered is we really just don't have a good plan in place. What are we doing in the region? How do we move this forward? How do we go after some funding opportunities when we really just don't have a plan in place? So we're using some of the funds that we received under this grant, about $75,000, to develop a regional signal plan. So we've hired a consultant. We're working very closely with Federal Highway, the resource department, on kind of drafting this plan and getting this, kind of together for the region to move forward. So we have a draft of the plan that's under review right now. We're hoping to complete the plan in September. One of the things that we completed was a series of workshops. Part of this, one of them was doing the traffic signal CMM framework as part of this effort. now that we've gone through one CMM. So now we've gone through that effort as well as part of this project. So the process is ongoing. We're still hoping that, good outcomes will come out of this, a plan for the region. Again, we're working closely with our local MPO. They did an inventory of kind of the region years ago, but we haven't, everyone's very short-staffed. They might have one maintenance technician to handle, 600 signals, for instance, the city of Buffalo. How do they help? How do they accomplish this, and how do we move forward in looking at this? So this is where we're, focusing on some of those funds to help us do that. The next three action items are sort of related. One is performance measures. We were looking to, one of the things we talked about, NITEC publishes an annual report. If anyone's interested, is on our website to take a look at. We do a lot of looks at a lot of the data and pull that together. But are we really? How do we take this, what we do here? Are we looking at the right performance measures? How does that tie into what Federal Highway wants and looking at performance? And so that's where we're kind of doing this under one big project. It's called the NITEC Strategic Plan Update. We're using $95,000 of this grant to update a strategic plan that was done for NITEC in 2007. So we're updating that plan, tying into it a performance measurement plan as well. And then there's some other action items on the other slides I'll show. But so right now I've just finished reviewing, it was about a 180-page draft plan just this past week. We're hoping to kind of wrap this plan up and complete it by September. So we have a consultant we're working with on this, and a lot of good efforts. We held a lot of kind of some workshops. We've gone through our committee structure and really introduced this that way. I brought it to our regular committee meetings, getting all the committees engaged in this whole process and making sure, where do we go from here? Strategically, where should NITEC be? What things should we be working on for the agencies, that sort of thing. So the next action item was on our culture, and one of the things we looked to come out with was kind of an education program, both for internal and external outreach. One of the things we've found over the years is, as people retire, there's not a good succession planning within, the agencies to learn about NITEC and what we do for their agencies. So how can we pull together some internal, materials to help get that going and help show, the value of NITEC's TSMO program, what we've done in this region, and then keep it going. And then again, the external outreach of it. NITEC does a lot of outreach with our media partners and other agencies that, how do we get other agencies involved in NITEC, more members of NITEC? There's no fee to be a member of NITEC. It's just participation at the committee level. That sort of thing is what we kind of ask from the members. But how do we get them more involved? It seems like we've been successful to get more involved. Usually it's after a large snow event or a large event in this region, which mostly have been large snow events. For instance, 7 feet of snow in a couple of days, it gets a lot of people involved. And then they find out about NITEC and how to get involved and get planned, ingrained into the process to get information that might impact their community. So we're trying to, leverage some of that. So as part of our strategic plan update, again, we have a task that our consultant is working on to look at that program and how do we expand on that, both internal and external. Again, organizational staffing, that's again part of the NITEC strategic plan. So that's taking a look at, agency participation and sharing of resources within NITEC and succession planning within agencies, plus also within NITEC, looking at our staffing needs. We're a very small staff here at NITEC. We run a 24/7 operations center with 17 employees. So it's about how do we then look forward if we're going to add new initiatives and take on new things, how does the staffing impacts and how do we need new staff and how do we take a look at that? So again, that's all part of the NITEC strategic plan update that we're working on. And then our last action item was collaboration. So this is one area, I think this is where we might have scored one of the highest. We do a lot of collaboration here within this region, especially when it comes to incident management best practices. But there is some areas where we lack, like, for instance, we do have a couple agencies that might not participate as much and work, as closely as we would need. So we've done some outreach. So under this, we use some of our funds to We brought in a speaker for kind of a peer exchange as part of an incident management symposium that ITS America held in Buffalo. We also conducted a highway safety training exercise. It was a live scene exercise, and there's actually a video on our website under our YouTube page that talked about it. It was a great exercise. We had about 150 participants, and really a lot of the participants were from a lot of local fire and police that normally haven't been involved in NITEC, so it was great outreach to try to bring more and be able to share some of that best practice tools to some of the local communities. And then we also sent 2 NITEC members, one of my staff members and one of our agency members to the Regional Operations Academy, and then we sent one of our staff to a systems engineering architecture, ITS architecture training that was held in Albany, New York, so we were able to use some of the funds for that just to get more training. So those were our action items. Just some of our lessons learned. So we started this process in 2014, June. It's still ongoing. You know, some of the things we learned is needing to get some higher upper level management involved in the process, you know, from the beginning. We did that a little bit with the executive leadership workshop that we had from the beginning, but again, I think even getting on the statewide, that was just at the regional aspect, but getting on the statewide perspective, some of the agencies, we needed to get their involvement in, just to even get their understanding of TSMO at the state level. But this was kind of a regional platform to increase awareness, so it was nice to use us as kind of a model to show how this could be then used across other areas of New York State. And one of the things we did learn, there was a struggle just trying to figure out, one, how to keep the program going, get the funding in place. That was kind of a hurdle for us here at NITEC, just because we've never kind of done something like that. But now we know how to do it. So moving forward, I think it'll be easier. But that's just some of the lessons learned that we've kind of accomplished under this. And then just some additional efforts that have stemmed from this. We have held a traffic management capability framework workshop in November of 2015. We did that through our traffic operations committee, and we came up with a whole list. I think it was about 40 action items, and what we've done is kind of peel off some of those action items and incorporated those right into the Traffic Operations Center Committee's work plan, and we've been working through some of those initiatives year after since 2015. And then again, the Traffic Signal Management Capability Maturity Framework, we did that as part of the Regional Traffic Signal Plan. So we've then used some of these, and I know there's some other capability frameworks that we're looking, you know, the weather and some of the other incident management ones that we'll probably look to. It just makes it easy because we can ingrain it right into our committee, do it. We have the participants, then we can kind of score ourselves and see what kind of action items we should start working on. And I think for the Traffic Operations Center Committee, it's really helped that committee to kind of refocus and kind of give it some things to work on. I think the committee was starting to lag a little bit of, you know, what should be some of our next initiatives. So that kind of really kind of jump-started that committee to give it some items to start, okay, this is some of the next steps where we should start looking at. So I know that was pretty long, so but there's my contact information if anyone wanted more information or to contact me.
Okay, thank you, Athena. Does anyone have any questions for Athena right now?
Okay.
Thanks again for that. And Faisal, is it okay if we switch over to you next?
Sure. Yeah, I will also appreciate if you can transfer the control to me.
One second here. You should be getting a request on your end.
Yeah.
Perfect. We can see your screen.
Okay. Let me go back up here. Slideshow from beginning. Okay, thank you, you know, for giving us an opportunity to share our TSMO and CMM work. Aztec, for those of you who are not familiar with that, is a regional operations partnership in Maricopa County. And let's go to the next slide. So Maricopa County region includes about 24 cities and towns, and we are a fairly big county. It's the fourth largest county in the United States, and a population of over 4 million. And we also have 5 Indian communities within the county. So Aztec Partnership was established in 1996, and it was one of the 4 model deployment initiatives in ITS at that time. So along with Seattle and San Antonio and New York, New Jersey region. So the purpose was to really deploy ITS technologies and test them. But in our region, our main goal was to provide a seamless transportation across these jurisdictional boundaries. As I said, we have 24 cities and towns, fairly large region. So we wanted to explore if ITS can be deployed to provide an integrated multimodal transportation system to effectively manage the transportation demand. So Aztec, through the model deployment, established a partnership which has 26 members, which includes 15 cities and towns, Federal Highway Administration, our local MPO MAG, Maricopa Association of Governments, State DOT, and actually the partnership is jointly led by State DOT and Maricopa County DOT. Phoenix International Airport, public transit agencies, and then Regional Public Transportation Authority, universities, and some private partners. The key function and focus is traffic management and operations. So the planning function is led by our MPO. So this is how we are organized. We have an executive committee which is comprised of public agency leaders representing transportation, emergency management, public safety, and public information interests. And then we have a strategic steering committee which serves as a liaison between the Aztec Executive Committee and all the other committees and working groups. We recently established a Media and Communications Task Force, and then we have Operations Committee that has been there since the inception of Aztec that focuses more on the technical issues and needs. We also have a Traffic Management Center Operations Working Group that includes the representatives who operate the Traffic Management Center, and then we also have a Traffic Incident Management Coalition. So we have gone through different phases since 1996. So the Model Deployment Initiative phase, which is on the left, focused more on establishing these partnerships and focusing more on this technology development and testing the technologies. For example, we were learning how to put the communication system, how to even learning how to install the camera. So some early development of technologies and developing systems that would integrate these towns and cities. One thing I want to make clear that unlike NITAC, we don't have a centralized operation. So each of the agency has its own independent traffic management center, and they have each agency operates independently. So we have 13 traffic management centers in the region. So one of our key challenges is how do you integrate this for regional operation, and how do you then build those systems for exchanging, for example, camera images, exchanging data across different platforms. So even each agency has its own signal system. So we have several signal systems in the region. We have TransCore, kits, IntelliLight, so different kinds of systems. And then as the population expanded, so these towns and cities really, there was more need for a seamless transportation because there were no buffers, so they were because of the growth. So that has been one of the challenges since inception. The next phase is the post-MDI phase, which really we exploded in deploying the technologies. We got the sales tax passed here, so there was good funding for ITS, and agencies deployed communication systems. They modernized their signal systems. And as a region, we also developed what we call a regional community network. That is a fiber backbone that integrates these different traffic management centers for the exchange of data. And also we expanded the data exchange to public safety. And during this time, we also developed a regional archive data system, which ingests the data from different systems. So we have freeway data, arterial data, third-party data, incident 911 type of data, construction and maintenance data coming from our partners into one centralized system. And then in around 2008 or 9, we had a good infrastructure that then we started looking more towards operations and making that shift from deployment to operations. Actually, our region was identified as one of the opportunity states for operations by US DOT. So that was an impetus for us to look more closely to operations. And we were also one of the early pilot agencies around 2008 and 9 for CMM. So moving forward, we started corridor operations, and then now have moved into the integrated corridor management. So this is our 2009 operations plan, and this plan identified 7 key focus areas. One was we have a well-informed traveling public. 2, performance measures tell our story. 3, upper management, the public and elected appointed officials understand and appreciate our value. 4, incident management is responsive and effective. 5, leverage regional infrastructure for operational efficiency and redundancy. 6, create seamless operations partnerships. And 7, we have well-qualified, well-trained staff and a pipeline of new talent. So those were our 2009 focus areas. And following the plan, as I said, we got a request to serve as a CMM pilot, and then we approached it from a regional perspective. So we looked into these different dimensions and scored ourselves. So this is these scores are not based on the individual agencies' capability, but rather than more on the capability of the regional systems. If you had a score from an agency perspective, these scores may be a little lower than what they show from a regional perspective. We use the CMM and the plan, combine the two together, and then identified our top priorities. So within each of the focus areas, we identified our top priorities. So for example, in focus area of we have a well-informed traveling public, we wanted to have a close collaboration with the media, and then we had a task to do a media and transportation summit every 2 years. We wanted to improve the 511 system. And then within performance measures, we wanted to publish a performance measures book. So that's something that we are doing it every 2 years. Also, we publish it and post it on our website. Leverage the regional infrastructure. So implement a pilot ICM, And then number 6 within the incident management was to establish a TIM coalition. And then the 7 focused on workforce and organization development, including training activities and looking into training the local agencies in traffic, federal highway traffic signal timing manuals, into some advanced signal timing strategies such as adaptive signal control. So this is just an example. We look back after in 2013, and this is we just captured what we have achieved. So here is just a illustration of the achievements coming out of that plan. Now in 2013 and around 2013-14. We participated in the Sharptooth organizing for transportation system reliability implementation, and Aztec was selected as one of the agencies. We were one of the non-funded ones, so there were funded ones by Federal Highway, and we were non-funded ones. So through that support from Federal Highway, we went into the second round of CMM. And as you can see on this chart on the top, at this time we looked at Aztec as a region and scored on the dimensions, but also each of the agencies did a similar exercise based on their own jurisdiction. So again, as a region, we were scoring higher than as a jurisdiction, and the ones highlighted on the top were our weaknesses, the highest weaknesses. And we also compared as a region the CMM that we did in 2010 compared with 2014. So that's what the table is below. So and on the right, if you see, this is a change in capability. And as you can see, there is some change, but that's not a whole lot. And that's reflective of the nature of operations. It takes time. I think that's one of the lessons we learned. As compared to putting a project together versus doing operations, it does take time. This is more complex. So you're dealing with the staff, people, cultures, and those are difficult things if you're doing it at a regional level. So we use the CMM outcomes, the regional ones, and then identify key focus areas. So at this time, we're saying we're going to implement one ICM on Loop 101. We'll do TIM training statewide. We'll develop agreements, TSMO agreements between the agencies, and also reorganize, promote reorganization within the agency. So those were the key areas. But then that CMM led us to develop what was our second plan, which we called Aztec Operations Implementation Plan. So this is our 5-year vision for operational strategies and collaboration to advance the key initiatives. So this was looking at almost like a 30,000-50,000 level. Then we used this plan to develop annual plans. So on the right is an Aztec action plan. So out of the implementation plans, we identified about 29 initiatives or 28 initiatives in 2016-17. So those are our 1-year focus projects and initiatives. So we have a 5-year plan, and then we develop an action plan, which really identifies specific projects and initiatives. So as I said, we have an implementation plan, action plan, and on the right you see these specific projects. And the way we structured it is that each of these projects, based on their task, is assigned to an Aztec committee or a task force. So, for example, number 1 is Aztec business case, and it is assigned to the executive committee. And as you can see, there are other projects that are assigned to the strategic steering committee. There are projects that are assigned to the TIM coalition. And each project has a project champion and a responsible party. And we make sure that the local agencies are very well represented and take a lead in these initiatives. Then we take that specific project and also have developed a tracking document. So the champions have prepared. These are standard tracking documents for all the projects, and these are reviewed at our monthly meetings for these committees, and also by the executive committee. I don't want to go into the details, but this is a really good tool for us to keep a tab on the progress of each of the initiative and project. So the chair of the committee is responsible for reporting on all the items or projects initiatives within that committee. But then we also have individual champion who is responsible for making sure that that initiative is moving forward. So our third CMM evaluation happened in last year, actually 2016. And in this evaluation, we saw fairly good progress between the previous evaluation and in this evaluation. So as you can see, in business processes, we moved up from 1.5 to 2.5, and the reason was because we developed master IGAs between the agencies. So these are broad IGAs on TSMO and cover a large scope. And within the master IGA, we now have a capability of doing addendums for specific projects and initiatives, which the director level representatives can sign. Really saves a lot of time, because typically these IGAs take like a year or sometimes 2 years. So that's why we got a good bump in our business processes. Systems and technologies, we also jumped from 2 to 3. One of the products that we developed was called Aztec Regional Information System. So we were able to capitalize on the data that I earlier mentioned that we are integrating under the Regional Archive Data System and turning into information for our partners, but only customizing it to their region. So I think one of the challenges that partners had was they didn't want to get a statewide level information. They wanted, if some event happens within their jurisdiction, then the system automatically pushes them a notification. So we developed this system where agency can identify their region, and then the information is automatically pushed. This has been really successful. We also now integrated all the 911 data into the system. So those are some of the key reasons why I moved up. In performance measurement, we also moved up because we are now consistently producing this Aztec performance indicators book every 2 years. We have also incorporated the advanced or the automated traffic signal performance measures, and again we have taken a regional approach on that. So the system is designed for agency, but we used our fiber backbone, and we are pushing data from signal high fidelity data into RADs and developed a centralized performance measure system for signals. On the culture, we also moved up. Actually, 2 of the agencies, ADOT and MECDOT, now have TSMO divisions within their organization, and we're trying to build that culture towards the local agencies also. But these 2 agencies have set the stage and an example for the region. Organization and staffing has been a challenge. As you can see, we didn't move too much on that. There's a lot of moving around and training. We try our best, but I think that still remains a challenge. So I think I have the collaboration. moved up to mainly because of our ICM project that we'll be talking a little later, so I'll cover it there. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah, then it's an ICM discussion. So that's all I had, and I'll provide my contact information. It's after the slides, ICM slides. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, thanks, Faisal. Yeah, just echo any questions at this point for Faisal? Okay, everyone, no questions just yet. Hopefully you're saving them all up for the open discussion period. So we'll just keep moving right along. Jonathan, are you okay if we move to you next?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Did you have any slides or anything like that you need to have control of the screen?
Yeah, I have a presentation.
Okay. Let me give me 1 sec here to switch you over. You should be seeing a window pop up on your end asking you to take control. Perfect. We can see your screen.
Okay.
You might want to lower that.
There we go. Okay. So this presentation actually was put together in response to the original CMM process that we went through for our integrated corridor management planning grant that we currently have. Well, it's actually a planning grant that the Broward County MPO has, and we're providing support for them to develop all the documentation for an ICM system on Interstate 95 here in South Florida throughout the entirety of Broward County. So one of the things that we did see from our CMM process was that the lowest scores that we had came from collaboration and organization and workforce. So one of the things that we wanted to do in response to those results and some of the other internal processes that FDOT did with internal staff was create a outreach program to let people know just in general what TSMO is, and more specifically what our arterial management program is, because that's what the arterial management program that we have is what really impacts all of the local municipalities and the signal maintaining agencies. So I'll just dive into this presentation and go through it how I would for one of our outreach efforts that we try to have at least pretty regularly with any entity or agency that we can get a hold of. Just providing a pretty high level description of what TSMO is. We have a very well established freeway management program here in District 4 that's been around for just over 12 years now, with a fully monitored and data integrated system that is all managed from the Broward Regional Transportation Management Center. That's just right down the street from our office here in District 4. And really trying to reiterate the things that we see as the problems that TSMO could, and while I try to not use the word solve, alleviate, let's go with that. And that's, taking back the capacity that's lost due to reoccurring congestion or congestion created by traffic incidents. But ultimately, the way I like to boil it down to is, optimizing the efficiency of our roadway network and putting an emphasis in response to the events that we see, whether they're planned events or unplanned events. So some of the challenges that we see here in South Florida, obviously, is congestion or a very densely populated area. Incident management is where we see some of our largest benefit on the freeway system. So that is something that we are trying to mimic in the arterial environment as well now. And Some of the other challenges that we see are organizational, which I referred to in the CMM process, the results that we saw from that, and as well as funding. More specifically, operations and maintenance funding is where we see our largest struggles. And that's why, we thought it would be a good idea to engage the local municipalities, the signal maintaining agencies, and try to get them excited about TSMO, to get them on board with funding some of that operation and maintenance costs, because as a state agency here, we don't really have too much problem locating or allocating the capital improvement costs to deploy these systems, but it's that sustained operating and maintenance cost that really catches up with us quickly. So the way that we prioritized the network that we operate and maintain today was reflecting the greatest needs in regards to traffic, transit, and safety. Doing this on a typical day, but also putting an emphasis on the events and event coordination, whether it be some sort of festival or concert or convention or a crash or closure of a roadway. And we like to emphasize, just because we're a state agency doesn't mean that we don't take into consideration the off-state system roads. That's something that we try to bring to the forefront and show the maintaining agency or local municipality, and to provide them some insight from our perspective of where they could perhaps focus some of their attention on. So our arterial management program, everything that we do is performance-based. We track everything from travel time reliability to the way and frequency that we use our digital message signs. This is all done through the Broward Transportation Smart Sun Guide Transportation Management Center. Currently, we're in the arterial environment. We're operating it's actually just over about 72 miles of managed roadway in the arterial environment. That supplements the well-sustained program that I mentioned for freeway, which is just over 200 miles of 250 miles actually of primarily I-95 and I-75. Our operations take place Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and we're fortunate enough to only have to collaborate at least in Broward County with one signal maintaining agency, and that is the county. They're responsible for all 1,400 signals or so in the county, which almost 700 or so are on the state highway system. So the Smart Sun Guide TMC actually is a shared facility between FDOT and Broward County. Actually, FDOT is leasing the space from Broward County to take over the entire control room floor and use the other facilities there for other staff and signal timing engineers. FDOT actually has signal timing engineers as well as the county, so we can make our recommendations based on what we're seeing within the network that we manage. So some of the strategies that we try to focus on right now are general traffic performance, taking that back to travel time reliability. We have a huge push right now in South Florida for transit. We'll be seeing our first streetcar system come on board here in District 4 in the next few years. A high-speed rail system that's connecting Miami to Broward will be coming through and be operational by the end of the year, at least the first phase of it, and as well as monitor the signal system status. We have that marked here as a future goal of ours, but it is something that we do kind of more on an ad hoc basis to show specific situations to what we're responding to. In addition to traveler information dissemination with our digital message signs, as well as the Florida 511, and any other outlet that we have the means of getting some information out to the public, we certainly try to capitalize on. And the event incident management, like I mentioned, we have a well-sustained program of severe incident response vehicles for the freeway environment, as well as rapid incident scene clearance teams to keep our performance of the available roadway and lanes available at an all-time high, as best of our ability, and then carrying that over to traffic signal timing, like I mentioned before, working with the county signal timing engineers as well as the signal timing engineers that we consult with to provide recommendations to them on a regular basis. This is just a quick look at the coverage area that we currently see. This is the 72 miles in Broward County that I mentioned. The way that we laid this network out was based on 3 criteria. That was signal density, crash density, and transit ridership, trying to kind of encapsulate all of those strategies and goals that we feel like play into the TSMO process. And the way that we manage and operate this network is by using our standard operating guidelines to respond to incidents, or at the very least monitor the incident, working with emergency responders when possible, as well as getting the enhanced backup from the other programs like the severe incident response team that I mentioned. We work with the county staff here in Broward County as often as possible, and that was one thing that came out of our capability maturity model, was to focus on the collaboration that we currently have and grow that communication to other agencies and entities. Since we have the situation where Broward County is monitoring and responsible for all the traffic signalization in the county, sometimes it comes down to us also having to engage the local municipalities to let them know that there's certain things that we're doing right now that we would love to expand into their area, but again, it's hard to say. It's hard to put that all on the maintaining agency for us to continue to be deploying systems and networks without having the ability to continually increase our operating and maintenance costs appropriately. So some of the interagency coordination that we partake in is with the local law enforcement and fire rescue. That's one thing that we've seen a great benefit from through our TSMO outreach that this presentation is a part of. We've met with a few different county police agencies as well as fire rescue. Recently went to the PSAP for Palm Beach County to further coordinate with them for traffic incident management. And based on the response that we are getting from all of the emergency services and police that we engaged, one thing that came out of this whole process was a task work order for our TSMO consultant to help us develop an arterial traffic incident management program. And we're actually modeling that program off of the REACT program that Maricopa County has in place currently. From what I understand, their consultant, Kimley Horn, is actually my consultant here as well. So they've been a great benefit, or they've provided great benefit and really good insight to that whole process. And with any luck, we're going to be getting sponsorship from FHWA for myself and someone else to go out to Maricopa County and see this, the REACT program live later this year is what we're trying to coordinate. So moving on to the operations and maintenance focus, this is a screenshot of our monthly dashboard that we put out. It captures everything from the travel time delay savings to the network availability. And actually this one is a little, we've had some changes this quarter to it, to where we're now tracking some of the traffic monitoring sites to get classification of the vehicles in real time along certain corridors. And now we're tracking the performance of that as well as the digital message signs. And all of this culminates into us putting together a benefit to cost and really associating a value, monetary value to it, because that's, for the most part, what speaks to a lot of the people that are making the decisions that are going to help us escalate the program in the future. So some of the in the next 5 years, we have 5 more deployments in Broward County, 6 more in Palm Beach County. That's the county just to the north of us. They're a great operational partner to us and have really allowed us to make the most of the resources that we've put out there and provide to them. Palm Beach County does a tremendous job of using our staff as an extension of theirs, which is the ideal situation for the transportation network. So one thing that also came out of the CMM process for us is we also decided to, as a district, hold a value engineering study for the entire TSMO program. Currently in District 4, there are 12 FDOT employees in the TSMO program, as we do have a ton of consultant support to run this program. But we had the input of those 12 employees as well as various offices throughout the district, from planning, design, and maintenance and operations, provide input to our value engineering study for the TSMO program, and we were able to come away with, I believe it was 15 recommendations to implement, all with TSMO in mind, and in an effort to mainstream it throughout our district. Some of those recommendations were to create a master plan, which I'll get into right now. But some of the other smaller ones were developing a TSMO scoping form, which allows us to have a schedule activity associated with every project in DOT, anything from a PD&E study to a landscaping project. We now have a schedule activity associated with TSMO to where the project manager is then required to coordinate with us and get our input on the project prior to the scope being developed, or at least ideally that's when it would happen. And with the scoping form, at the very least, we'll be able to provide them information of our existing network and let them know of the assets that they have to maintain or protect during a construction project that they're going forward with. Or we may also have the opportunity to get new devices out there, upgrade old devices, or anything like that. So the master plan that we created was actually an effort that was led by our planning office, which was a pretty unique situation for us. And at least for us at FDOT, the planning world seemed to always move much slower, and we were in the traffic operations office where things tend to move very quickly. So it was, kind of culture shock for both of us to be working together. But it actually came out with a really good product, and we're extremely happy with our master plan. Ultimately, we came up with a way to define a strategic network looking at all arterial roadways in our district, starting in Broward County and Palm Beach County. Looking at all arterial roadways, whether they're on the state highway system or not, and assigning them values based on everything from the current V to C ratio to the 2040 V to C ratio, any safety concerns, looking at bottlenecks, and quite a few other criteria, signal density still taking into consideration all the original criteria that we used, but really diving into it further to get an idea of where our strategic network should be. Which was pretty validating for us because some of the corridors that we already manage were some of the first to pop up. So now we can start focusing on the next corridors that were ranked accordingly. So through the master plan, one of the goals of it as well is to mainstream TSMO in an effort to integrate this process into all project phases, like I mentioned. Some people might wonder why we're including a landscape project in consideration for TSMO. Well, that's because when our infrastructure, our cameras, our CCTVs are out there and they come through with a landscaping project, they're pretty it pretty frequently does it happen where we'll end up with a palm tree blocking our entire camera, or not making other landscaping, making the DMS sign not fully visible or something like that. So really, we didn't want to have any project that we wouldn't have the opportunity to include some considerations on. So through the TSMO project development process, we're trying to leverage current opportunities through our work program. We were successful in including language in the newest instance of our long-range transportation plan for the Tri-County area. That's something that they'll now have to take into consideration, not only the no-build scenario that they're assessing, but the TSMO build-out scenarios, ideally not as a standalone, because I don't know if it's always going to be a scenario where TSMO can help alleviate a problem without some infrastructure upgrades. But the TSMO scoping form and everything is where everything like that will be captured. Another product of the TSMO master plan for us was standalone projects we came out with. We actually proposed 2 projects, one for Palm Beach County and one for Broward County earlier this year to our upper management, and they got approved for prioritization. So now we're just waiting to see where we fall in terms of the funding requests. And the next the next project, at least here in Broward County, will be extending the current network that we have and taking it a step further, trying to get some of the connected vehicle technology in place and programmed, as well as integrating 3 of our movable bridges that we have here down in South Florida that are closest to the downtown area of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So that was something that we've been working on for a while. How can we get those types of alerts and that data set into the TMC, and now we've found a project to do so. Some of the other partners that we're trying to ramp up our collaboration with right now is the MPO. Working with them, I actually gave this same presentation to the Tactical Advisory Committee for the Broward MPO just last month in an effort to just let them know about the TSMO projects and the types of benefits that we're seeing from them. The goal here was to ultimately get them to prioritize TSMO projects more aggressively than they have in the past. The safety office is an office that is within traffic operations, and we work with them pretty regularly. Our safety section has been pretty successful in being able to justify the need for fiber optic communications for the signal system to have that coordination, and are able to justify a safety need for that communication to be deployed. And that really the communications network for us is what we view as the first step to really allow the TSMO program to be established and grow. We work with our Office of Modal Development regularly on transit-related projects. They generally elect to take the project management role of some of the transit-related TSMO focuses, like transit signal priority and queue jump. But we are there to make sure that they're comfortable with moving forward through the systems engineering process, as that's something that we try to adhere to most closely as possible throughout the project development and implementation phases, as well as working with our district freight coordinator to figure out how we could have a better understanding of tracking the freight traffic through South Florida, find out where we need to focus those types of resources and funding. Most recently, we partnered with our airport, talking to them about our network and letting them know the types of devices that we utilize to optimize the efficiency of our roadway. And they, took a page out of our notebook in terms of wanting to deploy an arterial travel time system through their terminal roadways to be able to track the performance of the people trying to pick up or drop off people, and also dynamically assign the arrival and departure level, the two levels that they have here, dynamically assign people to use a specific level in response to traffic that they might be seeing at the other level. So they'll have a fully integrated travel time system that will feed into the travel time system that we have throughout that 72-mile network, and we'll be able to generate travel times for them locally within the airport, as well as get an idea of how long it's going to be taking their customers to get from a certain location or certain municipality here in South Florida to the airport at any given time of day. I already mentioned mainstreaming TSMO. The freeway and the highways for FDOT have had sustained success and have been recognized nationally and even internationally. I believe a few months back we had representatives here from New Zealand that came to check out our traffic management center, so that was pretty interesting. But the arterials are a whole different animal. It requires joint collaboration with many agencies, the signal maintaining agency, sometimes just the local municipality, depending on what their operational interests are. And the focus that we try to emphasize there is that a TSMO project isn't something that you roll out, build, and once construction's complete, it's really done. For us, once construction is complete for a TSMO or ITS project, that's when our work actually begins in terms of operating and maintaining the roadway now, as we would expect to be able to do throughout the life cycle of the devices and infrastructure that we're putting out there. So that's kind of just a quick insight as to how we try to stress the resources that we would love to collaborate on and have a vested interest in moving forward with the local agencies. Like I said, most of these accolades speak to the freeway management program. They've had a very good sustained success there for years now, and now we want to take that TSMO focus area and really put emphasis on the arterial network as well as transit, freight, and goods mobility, like I said. And another thing that we're looking into is work zone management. We have a lot of construction going on in South Florida year-round, and especially during our busy season in the wintertime, the transportation network really feels the effects of the compounding effects of a work zone with this influx of traffic and all of the other weather and things that will play into it. So work zone management is something that we're trying to kind of take the focus out of contractors' requirements to maintain a work zone management area and kind of put that focus back on us since we feel like we have the better ability to manage the roadway due to our collaboration with the signal maintaining agencies. So just a few words on how this kind of plays all into the congestion management or the capability maturity model for us. We started the capability maturity model in response to the ICM grant, like I said at the beginning. And something that we saw is that we weren't doing too bad based on everything that we've put in place so far. But that's why the focus needed to be put on collaboration and the organizational workforce aspects of it. We do a good job of staying ahead of the curve in terms of the systems and technology that we're deploying, as well as the performance measurements. And those now, with the collaboration with the MPO for our integrated corridor management grant, we've really been able to put the ball in their court in terms of their congestion management process and the performance measures they look to justify projects and how they align with what we do in the TSMO focus area. So that was really all I had right now. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. I also have my contact information there as well as Allison Blunt. The way that our organizational structure works, for TSMO, my focus is on the developmental side, where Allison's focus is on the operational side. So that might help you kind of formulate who you'll be gearing your question towards. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any questions at this point for Jonathan or Allison?
Hey, Jonathan, this is Faisal. So looking forward to see you here in Phoenix. And I thought, as I was thinking, maybe we can make a quick trade. You guys, I saw your slide on performance measures, really good. So we can exchange with that, sharing the React information with you.
Certainly, that'd be great. I look forward to it.
Okay, so thanks again, Jonathan and Allison. So the last, before we get into some of the open discussion, the last presentation we have is Tom Hine with the Kansas DOT in the Wichita area. Tom, give me just a sec to pull your slides up here. Come on. Let me put this in presentation mode, and yeah, Tom, just let me know when you want me to progress.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Well, Kansas DOT is wrapping up a Sharptooth L06 grant that was from the FHWA, of course, and it allowed us to have our capability maturity model workshop and continue that process, although after hearing these earlier discussions and presentations from other groups, I feel like we are still at the baby walking stage in not only using CMM, but TSMO in general. So we have a long ways to go. Next slide. We'll kind of give you a timetable of how we have progressed, or maybe not progressed as quickly as we'd like to, but we started in March of 2014. I think most of our participants in the CMM workshop had never heard of TSMO or CMM. So we really came into it with an innocent eyes, but a complete lack of understanding of what a CMM was and how it might help us. But it was a long day. We worked through the day, and I think we gained an appreciation for the CMM, although maybe throughout the day we didn't understand what we were doing or how this was going to help us. But in the end, I think the CMM really was a good workshop for us. So in April, maybe we understood the CMM process about 50%, I think. But by July, we had put together enough of our ideas and worked with our consultant to develop at least an implementation plan outline. And we felt like, wow, this is great. We have some great ideas here. We had a really aggressive timeline on that outline that said, hey, we're going to start this next month, and we're going to dedicate these number of people to it, and it's going to take them about 5 months to do this, and things like that. And we soon found out that we were lucky to get some of the people to a day-long CMM workshop, let alone have them actually work on items that came out of the CMM and TSMO in general. So we really had a wake-up call there and reeled back and said, okay, we're going to keep working on this, and we have worked on it, but it has been a slow and an arduous process, I'd say. Heck, it took us another almost year to get a TSMO committee together. We had a history of a similar committee as we built our ITS architecture back in the late 1998, I believe, through the early 2000s. And then once we started deployment of our ITS system in Wichita itself, the committee kind of worked through that process of the first phase of ITS implementation, and then after that, it seemed like the DOT kind of took over all of the ITS aspects and that regional committee from multi-jurisdictional agencies, they just didn't get together anymore. So we lost that TSMO contact with that, and so we restarted that TSMO committee in June of 2015, and we meet about every other month, and we've really made progress in our collaboration and in just talking about things that we never talked about before. Many of them TSMO strategies and techniques that maybe we were doing on an ad hoc basis, but the fact that we were meeting as a committee helped us further those causes, and I think also continually looking back on that CMM and the things that we needed to improve. From that federal grant, we also did some peer exchanges in 2016 and finished them up this year. We went to Florida, we went to Washington State, we went to Arizona, and we went to Colorado, and I think we went to larger metro areas than what Wichita is. Wichita is only 390,000 people, and our region is probably 500,000. And we are kind of an island within the center of Kansas. We're 2 hours away from Topeka, which is our state capital and the headquarters for our DOT. We're 3 hours away from Kansas City, the closest really major metro that has congestion problems where they really have to incorporate TSMO measures. Wichita is a little bit different in that I think when initial ITS dollars were doled out back in the late 90s, there were 76 communities that received planning money, and we were number 76. So we really aren't one of those metros that has huge problems, although you wouldn't, if you talk to our citizens, they believe we do, and that every construction project is aimed directly at them. So we aren't the big problems that, when we went to the state of Washington, we looked at Seattle, it's like, wow, no, we don't have those problems. In fact, some of our peer-to-peer people that came in from Washington State said, well, why are you here talking to us? But we really, in these peer-to-peer exchanges, have learned something everywhere we've gone, even though maybe their system was much larger than ours, and their TSMO operations were obviously more mature than ours. But we took away those tidbits from those exchanges, and I think we gained some things in our culture, we gained some things in collaboration that really came back to that CMM workshop, and it really played into how we would finally implement more of the things that came out of the CMM workshop. We are just now in August of this year finishing up the large implementation plan that we needed to produce. I mean, it's going to be a larger document and more of a TSMO document. We also have, through this collaboration that came out of the CMM workshop, that came out of the TSMO committee, we have started what we're calling an alpha project, simply because we hope that eventually we'll go through the entire alphabet. But the alpha project is one of those projects that is incorporating 4 different entities, 4 different governments, and doing a corridor management project. This is the first time this has been done in our area, so we're very excited about it, and it all came about because of our TSMO committee meetings, which came about because of our CMM workshop. So that's kind of where we are right now and how we've built on this. And in the next slide, you'll see just a basic outline of our dimensions from our CMM workshop. We saw, next slide, please. We saw that we had pretty low numbers, but you really can't compare your own numbers to somebody else's after a CMM because everybody looks at it a little bit differently. But we definitely realized that we were low in culture for TSMO and low in organization and staffing, and we've worked on those items since then. I can't say that we would raise that number at this point, but it does cause us to focus on those areas, and we do think about it. We talk about it every time we meet in our TSMO committee, and if you'll advance to the next slide, I'll show you how that committee is comprised, similar to what other people do when they bring a regional group together. We've got the DOT, we've got the local city, the local county, We've got our Metropolitan Planning Organization, our federal highway guy. We have a TSMO consultant that ends up doing a lot of the work for us because organization and staffing is one of our low points, so we don't have a lot of people dedicated to this, so we tend to use some consulting work on that. We've got our local turnpike authority, and then we have a freight representative. So this committee continues to work on this, and we will continue to implement those pieces in our CMM workshop implementation plan outline, and then eventually this month or next we'll be finished with our implementation plan and move forward, hopefully even faster. But after seeing the maturity that some of the other people on this talk today have advanced, we really have a long ways to go. Although we feel pretty good about ourselves and how far we've come, we still have a long way to go. Next slide. And I get us back on schedule by wrapping it up.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tom. I appreciate that perspective, and even just hearing some of the things that you guys have been doing since last year, when I know you participated in our Midwest Peer Exchange in Milwaukee. It sounds like you guys have grown quite a bit even since then, and I'm excited to hear more developments from you all in the future. With that, go ahead. Yep.
Well, I was going to say we sent 3 people to the Operations Academy. We're sending 2 more this year. We've sent 10 or 15 people to regional operations forums that you mentioned, Milwaukee being one of them. So yeah, we are moving forward, and that's a good thing. Go ahead now, take it away.
Absolutely. So with that, I hope that you've seen through the presentation so far kind of a high-level overview of who's doing what within these different operational areas, and particularly as they pertain to the CMM evaluation process and improving some of the strength areas that may have been identified as initial sort of weaknesses or areas of improvement in the evaluation process. What I want to do now is I want to open it up to some more open discussion and some Q&A and some back and forth dialogue on some of these specific issues surrounding the actual CMM evaluation process, and maybe even more generally around some of the different activities that you all are working on within your agencies to build up your capabilities within the different focus areas. And so to that end, I have questions that I've been writing down through the presentations. I'm sure Les and Tom, Kern, and others may have some thoughts too, but I wanted to first give the opportunity to the participating agencies, if you have specific things that you'd like to talk about or questions that you'd like to throw out to the group for discussion. I want to give you the opportunity to do that first, before we get to some of the other discussion points. So I'm going to stop talking for a few minutes, and I'll just open up the floor, and we'll take any questions or thoughts from the group on this topic.
Steve, this is Faisal. So maybe I'd like to start where Tom left, actually, and I think he made a very interesting point. He said that we looked at the CMM with our own eyes, and I think that's a universal fact. I mean, everybody's looking through their own eyes. So, and this may be to Les and maybe Federal Highway and others. So how do you standardize this so we are comparing apples to apples? I know it's a tough problem, but maybe that was something that came up in my mind from Tom's presentation.
Great. Any thoughts from the group or any of the speakers on? I know you all are pursuing different program areas and different performance measures, and focuses. Any thoughts on how to affect that kind of cross-agency comparison, or any work that you all have done as you've been reaching out to other organizations and agencies on your own?
Well, this is Tom back in Kansas. I think the temptation is to take your numbers and compare them to another state or another district's numbers, and you just can't do that. You arrive at those numbers through a collaborative process with your team, either on the local or the state or regional level, however you did your CMM. But and there's no doubt that you want to compare yourself to someone else and say, God, how did they get to 3? Well, they may not value the 3 the same way that you do. So I just think you've got to be real careful about considering these to be hard numbers that are the same across the country. While we all use the same guideline, I think everybody came to different numbers through different processes, and I'm guilty of it today, saying, golly, we really are terrible at this. Look at our numbers compared to everyone else on this conversation. Yet I got to remind myself, no, we've got to work on our own thing and ignore other people's numbers. They may have gotten at those numbers differently than we did and looked at things differently than we did, and we just need to really focus on our own problems and our own numbers and not worry about everyone else's.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Les. Can anybody hear me? Okay, I don't know what's going on, but I was trying to talk and nobody was hearing me. Okay, so what I wanted to say is that from the very beginning of the CMM process, the idea was really not to worry about trying to compare from one area or state to another. I've been involved in several of the CMM workshops, and sometimes I scratch my head at how low the organization has rated itself, knowing what they do, and sometimes I've scratched my head about how high they rate themselves, knowing what the organization does. But I don't think it matters so much. I don't think this is intended to be some way to compare against someone else. It's not like the signal system report card, for example. It's really about identifying where the group feels they are in each of these, and then look at opportunities to take that next step. The only time that I would be real concerned is if you look at kind of the actions that would be typical for going from 1 to 2, for example, and they've really hit all those. So in that case, we might say something about trying to get them to think about being at a higher level. But I think it's not. I don't mean to disagree here or to not validate your concerns, but I don't think it's intended to be able to compare. And I think if you do, you can kind of lose the focus of what the intention is. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, I think it does.
This is Tom Kern, the other Tom. It's been great to hear this dialogue, these presentations throughout the last hour or so. And I was making notes to sort of ask myself what is emerging out of this whole CMM effort, into which so many organizations have genuinely invested their time and effort. And one practical consequence of this, as I've listened today and engaged with other organizations, is in fact what I think is the beginnings of the institutionalization of TSMO. Because each jurisdiction is making sense of the systems management and operations challenges it's facing, doing its own prioritization, if you will, the collaboration and coordination across jurisdictions and organizations, significantly important, particularly in a resource-limited world. And what what I've learned from these discussions and again hearing today is really the institutionalization of what we have come to call TSMO and the the key elements throughout all of that if we're to make this institutionalization really work in terms of the mobility and safety goals we have. So CMM, I think, has contributed to a great deal of that, thanks to the discussions, in many cases the hard discussions that had to take place throughout the country as each entity took this on. And I think we're seeing this here to much greater effect, whether it's in the form of more effective collaboration, master plans, a better resource allocation, a better sense of measuring and monitoring performance. All these things are making a big deal, I think, in the whole execution of the charge that we have in front of us as transportation entities.
I had a question to the group, and it really involves something that Tina mentioned about the CMF process. She mentioned that in NITEC they've gone through 2 CMF evaluations, one for traffic management, I believe, and one for traffic signals. I don't recall hearing anybody else doing that, but I may have missed it. Have any of the other regions or areas thought about also doing some evaluation on the capability maturity frameworks that are more targeted to specific kind of TSMO activities or anything like that, kind of more of the field implementation type of actions?
I think this is Jonathan Ford and Allison Glunton, FDOT District 4. I think for us, through the ICM process, what we actually ended up doing was our capability maturity model was for the traffic management capability maturity framework, and that's mainly what I was speaking on today.
Okay.
That might be more so because we are a state agency and we do not, control the signal system necessarily or anything like that. So we needed to get into the traffic management side overall versus, the signal system or some of the other modules that they have for the other frameworks that they have.
Okay.
This is Tom in Kansas.
I apologize for missing that.
We did use the CMM for a statewide effort, and it was for work zone traffic control. So we brought people in from headquarters and the field and discussed these items and did a CMM workshop that way. So that's a valuable thing for us. In fact, it's one of the goals of we're doing the CMM and TSMO activities in the Wichita metro area, but our overall sneaky goal is to take this statewide, and rather than attacking it on the statewide level in Kansas, where we knew that there would be resistance and it would be an uphill battle, we picked an area that was open to it, Wichita, and we're now trying to spread those tentacles out into the state. And in fact, we did a peer-to-peer visit to Colorado DOT and and Arizona as well, where they have incorporated TSMO throughout their agency from the top down, and we're actually trying it from the grassroots up, but we really need that top level of our DOT to embrace it a little bit more than they have in the past, and so that's why we're trying to do some end rounds and trying to get the culture a little bit more active in the state and then try to take it statewide.
Thanks.
So this is Steve. I want to go back and get some more thoughts or perspective from the group. I want to revisit a point that Tom Kern made a few minutes ago about how a lot of this work that your agency, you're doing with your agencies through the CMM can really feed into that idea of institutionalizing TSMO. And I'm mindful of the fact that within the practitioner community, with TSMO being a relatively, call it nascent program area, compared to some of the more well-established asset management programs, pavements and bridges and that kind of a thing. I think there's sometimes there's some ambiguity or some subjectivity surrounding TSMO, and I think that can sometimes lead to a lack of buy-in, a lack of that institutionalization compared to some other program areas. And I'm curious, as you all have gone through this CMM process and then evaluating your agencies and really putting some hard numbers and sort of this comprehensive overlay to your operations and your TSMO activities, have you found that that's resulted in more buy-in agency-wide, or more of that culture shift that I think a lot of us are really looking to do within our individual agencies? What's been your experience with that so far?
So this is Faisal Salim from McDOT. I think in our state, and as mentioned earlier, the biggest impact has been really the ADOT creating a TSMO division, and it is top down and across the organization, which was really a major shift within the organizational processes. So they have a division, and it's a fairly large division, and it cuts across several functions on TSMO. So I think with a state agency making that big move, it has some down the line impact. So Maricopa County, has a TSM division as well, and that's the second large agency within the state. So what I was saying is that these two moves, I think, have some bearings on the local agencies. The real challenge is with the local agencies, especially, we are just coming out of a very deep economic hit, where there was a lot of consolidation of functions, and TSMO was buried under some function, and its relevance was even lost. So we really took a step backward during a recession. So I think these moves by the larger agencies are being viewed positively by the locals, and I think as the economy revives, maybe they will follow suit.
Sure. Appreciate that, Faisal. Other thoughts from the group on this institutionalization aspect?
This is Angela from Wisconsin DOT. We don't necessarily have staff assigned specifically to TSMO activities in the regions. I'm at the region level or at the central office level. There's been lots of workshops that we've held to try and understand how WISDOT can get better at TSMO, but I think where we usually start to fall down is that next step after we do a CMM application, and who's going to lead the effort, who's going to keep bringing the conversation forward, because we don't necessarily have those groups. So at some point it'd be interesting to know those that do have TSMO groups, when you talk about large staffing or decent amount of staffing, what kind of positions are there, and what are their charge or responsibilities as a TSMO institutional group inside your organization?
Hi, this is Allison Glenn in District 4. You know, we're a little bit different in that sense because we do have a specific group for TSMO here. In the beginning, everything TSMO related originated with this singular group. But the more we grow this program, we're realizing that we can't be in a singular silo. And we really have started working with all the different departments and all the different agencies around, because if we don't have support from everyone, we're never going to be able to grow or get bigger. And not just support, but more of an understanding of what we do, the purpose of what we do, because that lack of understanding also seemed to be a hindrance with this growth of of our section. So, you know, we may have only a small department of 12 people, but we're starting to involve the planning, the design, and the operations. So everyone kind of has this involvement, so it's not just dependent on a singular person or singular group.
Sure. No, appreciate that perspective. I'm curious if Angela's question about, you know, some of those challenges and I guess this will get into some of our discussion a little bit later, but, you know, once you do the initial evaluation process, how are some of you all, I guess, pivoting that into a next step, or what is that next step, or what has been that next step for some of your agencies after doing that initial evaluation process?
This is Faisal again. I think, as I shared in my presentation, we have coupled CMM with a action plan exercise. So our next step, and I had a slide showing the process where we developed the implementation plan and an action plan. So the CMM is a good tool to give us a structured idea of where we stand and where our gaps are, and then it also helps us define high-level goals and objectives. But then we thought that we have to take those and turn them into some specific action items, projects, initiatives. So that's what we did as the next step.
So can I ask, who did that? Was that your TSMO group that took on those responsibilities? Who's your lead?
Well, this is for the Aztec partnership. So it is led by ADOT and McDOT. In this particular case of developing the action item, it was TSMO group within McDOT, the county, that took the lead for the region. And we had the consultant support. You know, we had Kimberly Horn develop the implementation plan and the action plan.
Okay. Other questions? Other thoughts from the group on how your CMM experiences have been so far, or maybe some of those lessons learned? I guess I'm curious. Did anyone going into the evaluation process, were you very surprised by any of the outcomes, or was, you know, I know a lot of times, you know, starting off you may be expecting to rate a little bit lower. Were there any cases where, you know, hey, you found like you were doing a lot better than you anticipated, or maybe a lot worse? You know, if there were any experiences like that, I'm curious to hear any thoughts from the group.
This is Angela again. I guess I don't know that I had a feeling going into it. I think someone described it earlier, like we had to kind of a 50% understanding after the CMM process as a group going into it. I think for me, the biggest benefit was creating awareness with other organizations, other people, other groups, that maybe there are things we can collectively do together to move forward to another level. and where we ended up landing on the actual CMM charts was probably less of a value, you know, that whether we're strong or we're weak in certain areas was good for everyone to come together and kind of agree on that, but then that we were able to take it to that next step and think about, all right, how can we work together and move forward, was the real value that came out of the discussion.
Hi, it's Athena from NITEC. Yeah, same with us. We weren't so hung up on the numbers, and I think even when we were doing the process, we, were kind of hard on ourselves a little bit, but as we kind of went through it, it's more about coming out with some action items that we could work on collectively and, within all the agencies that were there to really kind of work through the process and see where we need to go to give us to a next level. So, and I think that's given us a roadmap then to move forward and giving us items within NITEC to kind of track and move forward and, not hold necessarily the agencies all accountable, but bring them together and show how we all need to work together to make us, improve us, and get us to a next level.
Hi all, this is Allison. I do have a quick question. How frequently should the CMM or the CMF be conducted and analyzed? I mean, sometimes change happens quickly, sometimes it takes time. So you don't want to do it too often, but I mean, does anyone else have any thoughts or ideas on that?
Yeah, this is Faisal Salim from McDOT. It did not happen by design, but our first CMM was 2009-10 timeframe. The second was 13-14, and then the latest is 17. So it came like 3-4 years apart. And as I said, between the first and second, we did not see a whole lot of change. But as we compare the 13-14 with the 17, we see a change. So you're right. I think maybe it needs some thought that instead of putting a specific time frame, it is more on the progress or how the region is moving forward, and then making that decision whether this is a good time to do a CMM or not. But it seems like 3-4 years seems to be a reasonable time frame for doing a regional type of CMM. But I think if you're doing something like somebody mentioned about work zone, then it'll be a different time frame for a specific project initiative.
That's a good perspective. Les, I wonder in any of the workshops that you participated in, has that really come up in conversation as far as ideal frequency or anything that might drive a reassessment within the agency as far as activities go?
I have not heard of any kind of ideal frequency or when to do a reevaluation. Yeah, I think it depends how active the region or the organization has been and how effective they've been at kind of evolving their implementation plan and taking next steps. So in other words, if they're kind of moving through and still making progress at moving up on the different maturity levels, and they're confident in that, I don't know that you need to reevaluate. On the other hand, probably at some point you need to take another look because you may have gotten further ahead in one area than you thought, and you need to pay attention to maybe something that has been left a little bit further behind. But I think that ideal time frame really depends on what you're doing. I don't know if it almost seems to me, this is just talking from my perspective now, not anyone else's, but it seems to me that if you did it annually, that's probably too often. Maybe every couple of years would be a good thing to do. You know, if you've got a very active group and doing the whole assessment and then the implementation plan really gets you energized and going maybe more frequently than that, but I kind of think it just feels right to me to say about every 2 years. And it may be less frequently for some groups.
Yeah, it sounds like to me, I mean, I think identifying some of those key performance indicators and those benchmark points in the initial assessment and then maybe the post-evaluation process are really important to understanding that necessary frequency of reassessment. So like you said, Les, I mean, it may not be so important to use a time-based interval, but rather, you know, by working from those initial objectives, those initial goals, and those benchmarks, so to speak, with reaching different levels of maturity, you know, reaching those, that may be a better tell or a better indicator as far as when it's time to reassess, when certain benchmarks or certain you know, levels of capability have been reached, rather than on a fixed time basis, because every agency moves at a different speed.
Yeah, I think that makes good sense.
So looking at the clock here, we're at 3:30. Oh, go ahead, Faisal.
Just a quick point, and maybe an action item possibly to take to feds on that discussion on the last point. So the point I was making is that the CMMs that have happened, at least for us, have been all facilitated by Federal Highway or the consultant. I think with this, maybe this will not be supported for everybody. Maybe it is for some in the future. So that capability has to be built to facilitate a CMM session. I mean, it requires some expertise, and I think the agencies, at least our agency, doesn't have that. So if you're going to do these CMMs at whatever frequency, it's like a team training type of model. You know, you're building within your own agency and state team trainers. So it could be like a CMM trainers, or you know, it could be even from a consultant perspective, if there is a consultant that can be trained. So I think I really feel there is a need for that.
That's an excellent point. That's definitely, like I said, we're going to be, I think, as part of this sort of the wrap up of some of the CMM work through Sharptooth and then FHWA's reassessment process. We're going to be sharing some of this feedback with them as well. And so I think that's a good point to bring up with them too, that they can give some thought to as to how something like that might be best communicated out to individual agencies interested in the CMM framework. I appreciate that. Okay, so looking at the time, I guess. Oh, go on.
Hey, I just wanted to. Yeah, this is Les. I just wanted to say that probably the most important thing about being a facilitator in the group is that you don't represent any of the groups or agencies that are prominent around the table. I think it may work against kind of the buy-in if there was some strong agency representative that was the facilitator. I think other than that, I think just, you know, being trained in the process and that's not a huge, burden, but knowing what to do and how to do it and those sorts of things are the most important aspect.
Good point. All right. Any final comments around this particular topic? Okay, so I'd like to propose, because I want to make sure we have some time to devote to our other discussion items. I've got 3:33 by my count. I'd like to propose that we'll take a break. I appreciate folks, being patient and everything so far. I'd like to propose that we come back at 3:45, so take about a 12-minute break and stand up, stretch your legs, use the restroom, whatever, get some coffee. Whatever else you need to do, and we'll reconvene at 3:45 Eastern Time. So I've got 3:45. So I'd like to just keep rolling right along, and hopefully everybody is back from break, and if not, we'll trickle in here over the next couple of minutes. Topic 2 that we had on our agenda for today is focused around integrated corridor management. I think the intent of this discussion is to look a little bit more focused on a specific topic area. I know the question came up previously around, is anyone doing anything with the CMM or these capability maturity frameworks within a little bit more of a defined technical area? And so wanted to open the discussion around integrated corridor management and arterial management, and whether or not you're using the CMM framework or I guess the CMM or the capability maturity framework in this area or not, or whether you have other experiences to share with integrated corridor management, and maybe you have great success with it, maybe you're just looking to get started with it. I'd just like to open the discussion, or open the floor to any discussion or questions that folks would like to throw out there that we can try to address here as a group. So I'm gonna again stop talking, and let me know what you'd like to discuss in this area. Everyone's doing ICM completely perfectly?
Steve, I have some slides that can spur some discussion. I can.
Sure. Yes, that's right. You did have a couple of slides, Faisal. Let me switch back to you here.
Oops, sorry. Okay, so in our region, we have been working on several ICM initiatives. There is studies going on I-10, I-17, and that's our MPO, and also we are one of the 13 agencies that was selected by Federal Highway for ICM planning. But I would like to focus more on Loop 101. That's the one which we have implemented. So I'll go to that one. So this is Loop 101 corridor. It's about a 60-mile corridor, like a beltway, and it, as you can see, it encompasses several local agencies, also Salt River, Pima, Maricopa Indian community is part of the corridor. So I'm not shown the arterials, but there is a good network of arterials parallel and along with the freeway, Loop 101. These are some of the concerns, traffic growth, as you can see, 8% increase between 13 and 14, a lot of incidents, and travel time index went up by 28%. And it serves a lot of important destinations, sporting events. So it's a really important corridor in the region. So we did a pilot project, and we didn't have any funding like San Diego or Dallas. So it is a low cost ICM leveraging the TSMO basically. So on the east side is Scottsdale, and the section you see on the east side is the one that we implemented the pilot project. So we did not implement it yet for the full corridor. So in the process, we found that these are the important elements of a successful ICM operation. Number one is partnership. We all know that, but I think the more important part of partnership is sustainability of the partnership. As I said, there have been turnovers or agencies changing their organization depending on the economic conditions, other things, and all those impact the partnership. Because if you lose the key players, then you have to really start from zero with a new person or the organization in itself. So the sustainability is a challenge in general in an operation environment, but more so in an ICM environment where you need very active participation of the partners in a real operation. The value of plan, and it's really going very deep into the nuts and bolts of operation, like identifying specific alternate routes and looking into the infrastructure details there. How would you station, like our reactive emergency response team, we use that for route guidance, signal timing operations, looking into within the alternate routes, what are the other, there may be some local roads, you don't want the traffic to go there, how do you do that? So we develop almost 36 alternate route plans, besides other planning elements, which included operations procedures and guidelines. We developed the alternate route policy. We did modeling, and as I said, we didn't have enough funding, so really didn't do that extensive dynasty or sophisticated modeling. But we developed an Excel tool to model the impact of traffic on freeway closure. And the other experience that we have is the traffic really shifts to arterial. So your focus in an ICM has to shift to more on arterial operations because freeway is closed or restricted. So you do need to provide traveler information. You do need to clear that incident and have that command in place to work on incident response. But in terms of managing the traffic, the focus becomes arterial. Then signal timing collaboration capabilities, we included that in our plan, especially for incident management. So we developed, or City of Scottsdale developed 18 plans for each intersection, and they could implement that from their central software. RAM meter operational strategies, obviously travel information plan, and then agreements needed, and then incident management plan. So those were the elements within the planning. Formal agreements, I touched upon that we developed these master ideas, and then we leverage those master ideas for this specific project, ICM project. Technology has to be robust, it has to be solid. Data, for example, like ATSPM type of data, third-party data we have used in that, so that we can leverage systems like Aztec Regional Information System, so we can provide the timely information to our partners. Signal operations, the staff well trained, and I think the big piece is culture, because each agency is so much focused in their own culture and own operations that you really have to get out of that comfort zone and play it together. Sometimes, you know, the agency may look at it as a secondary role because, you know, this is something that I have something more important to do. I'm Maricopa County. My road is more important. So that culture has to shift, and that's difficult. And that's where the champions come, and they play a critical role. And obviously, agency should have put its own resources. And our ICM is only for incidents, so it's not a condition-based, automated, or we don't have like a sophisticated DSS. So sometimes these big incidents do not happen often. So people forget, and they forget how to use those manuals or training those operational manuals. So the tabletop exercises have to be frequently organized so that everybody is fresh in operating the ICM. So we have developed a playbook for each of our partners, and that playbook has a detour route, and the role of the agency is listed on that. So I think that's all I had just to start for the discussion. I have a slide, but I'll not go into that.
Great, thanks, Faisal. I guess let me ask, how long? What's been the history of the development of this ICM plan? How long have you guys had this in place?
So if you saw our CMM, that was one of the gaps that came out in our 29 CMM. So we started looking into that, and we developed an initial implementation high-level plan 2011. And then it took us like almost a year, or even more than a year, just to develop those very detailed core level plans. So we started implementing in 2014. So from 9 or 10 to 14 was a planning phase. It takes time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, appreciate that perspective. So let me take a step back and ask the rest of the group. I guess are there other folks on the call or on this virtual peer exchange that are currently doing ICM within your agencies?
It's Athena Hutchins with NITEC. Yes, we are. We did several years back. We had a small project looking at doing a concept of operations for the region. We did that, and then there just wasn't funding to move forward. Then we received a federal highway grant, and then also as part of New York State DOT and NYSERDA a grant, and we were able to leverage those two, put them together, and we've got a current project right now. We're looking to build our regional model and then being able to simulate some of the strategies. So we're hoping to finish that project, I think, early next year.
Hi, this is Allison Glunt with FDOT. We have, or the Broward County MPO actually has a grant for ICM. So currently we're in the process of development. I want to say we're a little bit more than halfway through. We just did the high-level requirements. We just finished that up. We are not 100% sure if we will get funding for implementation, but we are currently working with all the agencies involved to determine if funding can be available elsewhere, just in case we do not get the final grant money for implementation. So we're kind of still in the process of working through all of this.
Are there other folks on the phone or on the virtual peer exchange right now? I guess I'm curious, and I mean we can have this particular discussion go for as long or as short as there's interest and questions. I mean, if there is interest in pursuing ICM strategies within your agencies, are there any particular challenges or hindrances that you, are grappling with right now as you try to get these ideas rolled out that potentially the group could to help to address or to share some ideas on maybe how they solve those within their own agencies? So maybe not. I guess one other question then for I think it's Athena and maybe Angela and Faisal. With the ICM activities that you all are currently working on and pursuing, has the CMM, it sounds like in Faisal's case, I mean, that was a gap that was identified in the initial evaluation process, but going forward, do you think is the CMM or the capability maturity framework going to play any direct role in the development of those activities, or are they still kind of a separate thing, or do you see those growing closer in the future?
It's Athena. We see it growing closer. That was one of our action items, was to work closer with our MPO in the planning aspect. So one of our action items is to do that, and that's where we're using our ICM project to kind of mold that, develop a plan from here in the future. So I see them separate now, but they're kind of pulling themselves together because of the CMM.
This is Faisal from McDuff. So this is one of our projects within our action plan, and we are using the action plan as a tool to measure our progress. So it will reflect besides the other initiatives. So it will be one of the initiatives that we'll be monitoring and then including in the evaluation. So it's not separate. We're not doing a separate evaluation for ICM, but it will be part of a bigger picture.
Hi, this is Angela. Tom and I have been talking here a little bit about how to take some of the things that we've done already and then turn it into more of an action plan where we can use the resources we have available to us, and may not be as fast as we'd like to see things go forward, but we think maybe we can collaboratively come together with the resources to take some next steps. So I guess we've kind of just done the CMM, and now we have to kind of figure out, we have some of those next steps, but I don't know that they're necessarily following a strategic plan, and we'll kind of pull those together and figure out where we need to go.
Sure. Well, so I guess let me follow on that, Angela. Let me I guess focus on Wisconsin and La Crosse just for a second. In that case, and in figuring out how to take that next step, and maybe this can be a transition into our final topic of discussion. Are there any specific challenge areas that you're working or trying to work within, be it funding or staffing or that general cultural shift, or I guess what are your thoughts? What's some of that perspective or some of those highest needs areas that you guys are pursuing right now?
I think all of those are a concern for us. We at the DOT perspective anyways had an effort to try and maybe use some funding to add some capacity options to the community here, and now I think we're trying to focus, knowing that that's not coming soon or soon enough to try and address some of the operational issues. We'd like to do more things related to CMM in general. So I guess working with Tom, at the MPO is a kind of a good start because it already has a lot of the players sitting at the table on a regular basis that have the leadership roles. So we have mayors that come to meetings, the MPO meetings, every other month. At least right now we can call special meetings, or Tom can call special meetings if needed. And so having those representatives there and trying to maybe take some of these pieces, I think someone mentioned how we walked away with probably 40 items on here, and I think that was overwhelming, and maybe working with that group to narrowly define what kinds of things we'd like to see, and then taking some of the ideas that we're seeing here from, like Florida had the arterial management plan, maybe that's something we try to develop working with the MPO and assigning specific lead people to take on maybe those less than 10 items, and get groups together and have those conversations. We have signal systems here that are probably run by at least 3 different agencies that are running them, and we all have different philosophies on how to operate signals. So that's one area maybe we're just talking in general that maybe is a good place to start and get the right players at the table and come up with some performance measures and some guidelines on how we function and operate our signals. I think culture is huge. There's such a huge difference in how people think transportation should work in this community, and trying to just help everybody understand that we've done so many things to improve operations, and this is what we've done. We haven't done everything, obviously, but let's put it all on the table so that people can ask those questions in the right forums and maybe develop strategic plans out of those things too. So culture, staffing is probably a big one for our department, in that we have a lot of reactionary things. We don't necessarily make the time for some of this planning stuff. We just need to either free up the resources or assign someone this responsibility. So.
Yeah, and I'll chime in. This is Tom here in La Crosse. I think we have really a lot of education to undertake here, and technical expertise. We don't tend to have a lot of real expertise in these areas among our staffs here at the small community level. And so even if we have an idea that there's something we can accomplish, we don't necessarily have the expertise and leadership to put it into play. So as you know, as Angela said, we're gaining a lot of knowledge from this peer exchange, and focusing in on 2 or 3 things that we think we can accomplish will be really good.
Does that help?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that perspective, and I guess I'd pivot back to the rest of the group, and I'd like to hear some thoughts, or perhaps the rest of you have some experiences to share. I imagine, or from what I've heard today and last several years, a lot of the issues with staffing and funding, and just how to frankly prioritize some of these different improvement areas. It's not a unique problem facing Wisconsin and facing La Crosse. And so I'm curious to hear from the rest of you, perhaps maybe how you're all working as part of the CMM process, going forward. How are you working to prioritize or to triage, so to speak, some of these different needs, and come up with some of those program plans, and really focus on what needs to be done now versus what can be done a little bit further down the road?
Maybe just that, I don't know if it'll help, but it'd be nice to kind of know some people that have gone through that prioritization, what maybe they've found to be like the best bang for the buck, taking on what type of particular specific especially if you have anything related to arterials.
Here in Maricopa County, in the Aztec Partnership, we use a bottom-up approach. So projects are proposed at each committee level, and there is a champion for that. And then the committee, they're prioritized at the committee level, and then they're taken to the steering committee, and then the steering committee looks the projects from the various committees, and then there is second level of priority, and then they'll send it to the executive committee. So it's a bottom-up approach.
Thank you, that's helpful.
So I'm kind of curious, Athena, within the NITEC area, are there challenges around that, you know, with the sort of the international perspective? I mean, how does that process typically work with prioritizing and programming and implementation with your guys' organization as you work with the MPO and you work with some of the other local cities and jurisdictions in the area?
So it's been interesting because when it comes to the Canadian aspect, I mean, we run the Operations Center here with the ITS elements for Western New York, but in Canada, they actually operate their own system, and then we just have, you know, collaboration center-to-center systems that, you know, their stuff is sent to ours. The one thing I've noticed, they seem to be able to get things done a lot faster in Canada. So we've been able to try to leverage with them and work on different projects. They've been able to put systems in place definitely a lot quicker than we have, and a lot more funding, it seemed like, in the past. I think they're struggling now to just try to, and we're working with them, you know, to try to help prioritize stuff, especially around the border and how can we improve that. And we've had projects. One of the things we've tried to do is leverage different funding paths. So going after different grants to try to get projects accomplished. So whether or not that's been through, you know, a statewide grant or a federal highway grant, and we fortunately, I think, have been successful in getting some of those grants in order to move some of those initiatives forward. We are one of the first round of the ATC MTD grant, so we're kind of kicking off that project here shortly. And I think because we have that border crossing, that relationship, it brings that uniqueness to us. But again, they're at the table, we're all working together. You know, the border doesn't stop. We have to, you know, traffic still needs to flow. We need to work together. So there's challenges, but and one of the challenges we have struggled with is Canadians have money. They want to work with us and give us to do projects, and that's a hurdle we have. We've never kind of accepted money from Canada to do projects specifically. So, and we've talked about that. How do we work around that? How do we figure a funding path? You know, do they start paying a dues, so to speak, to NITEC? We don't have that structure now, but there have been some talks more recently on how to leverage, even working with Transport Canada and Federal Highway together to leverage. We did have one project, it was a pilot project that was between Transport Canada and Federal Highway where they pulled money and put some technology in place at the border to improve, and then as a follow-up, Federal Highway had another program to expand on that, and we were able to get that grant to kind of leverage and expand to one of the other bridges. So it is a challenge, and we're always working through that, but again, we're trying to leverage different funding sources that might be available and trying to show the uniqueness of our region and how we all work together at the structure platform of NITEC that I think has been able to use and leverage for some funding.
Great. Thanks, Athena. And I think that, I mean, that funding question is critical. I know for just about any agency. I'm curious if there's anyone else on the peer exchange right now. I mean, what are some other paths that you've pursued as you tried to secure funding for some of these projects? Has it been through the MPO? What do some of those other solutions look like, do you think, going forward?
This is Tom in Wichita. We're getting ready to take advantage of a end of federal fiscal year deobligated funds opportunity. Our Metropolitan Planning Organization gets figures from the state DOT a couple times of the year saying what their funding level will be, and many times projects that are in the works by the city or the county or maybe one of the other communities in our region just isn't going to happen in time to use those obligated funds, so they are deobligated and then they become available for other projects. And our Alpha project, which came about because of CMM, because of our TSMO committee, is one of those where we're not using a huge amount of money, about $500,000, but we're doing something of a corridor management project by working on the traffic signals in a corridor that go through 4 different jurisdictions, and adding ITS cameras and a couple of dynamic message signs. So, and it's coming together very quickly. This opportunity came up probably in May, and we are in August now. It's impossible generally to get a project going that quickly, but we are flexing some things and finding a way to get this done so that the region does not give back any of the federal dollars that come to the MPO. And we are perhaps doing a project that, while it's in our master plan or our long-range plan for the area, we are moving it up in our TIP, in our Transportation Improvement Program, with an amendment to make this happen. And so we are scrambling to get the plans together, and we'll have a letting very soon and start spending that money as well very soon as the fiscal year winds down in late September. So it's one of those opportunity things that we are taking advantage of to increase our synchronization as well as our ITS, and none of this would have happened without our TSMO committee being reactivated and getting together on a constant basis and doing that collaborative process of talking every other month and kicking around some ideas that maybe an individual jurisdiction would say, gosh, it'd be nice if that would happen. But by getting together in our TSMO committee, we're actually saying, okay, well, let's see if we can make this happen. And this one's on a really short time frame, so it's been a big challenge, and every week something comes up that is a temporary roadblock that we have to work through. But so far, everything's on schedule to work out.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Are there other thoughts or perspectives from the group? So I wanted to, I guess one question I wanted to make sure that we covered and had some discussion on today is, going forward with the CMM and with regional level TSMO and, just working, across agencies in general, what have been some of your experiences as far as, how are you starting these conversations with other agencies in your region? And maybe some of them are transportation agencies, maybe some of them are, law enforcement, emergency response, outside the traditional transportation spectrum. How has been that experience? How are you having those conversations? What are you looking to do with those going forward?
This is Angela. not necessarily just in La Crosse, but Wisconsin DOT has developed a time program when it comes to law enforcement. So we have regular meetings. I think it's at least twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year, depending on your location. But you meet to just talk about specific incidents that are happening along specific corridors. You do some mini after actions and share some of the lessons learned on those. We invite emergency management to those activities, public works directors. So depending on the area, we do have regular conversations, at least with those agencies. It's not necessarily part of the CMM, but I do think that it plays into trying to improve incident management. We also had great programs in time with scene setups and lots of courses and trainings that we provide with other agencies that help us do train the trainer programs that have jumped on board. I know that Federal Highways has those goals, and I don't know exactly what the goals are now to have so many agencies trained within a certain amount of time, and we've met those goals in the past to just make sure we're all at least on the same page with trying to respond to incidents, and that's been a good program for Wisconsin DOT.
This is Tom in Kansas. I would echo that. The TIM training that we've offered and provided in the metro areas has been a great thing to further the TSMO goals, and I think the key to it is offering it as free training to those law enforcement agencies and other first responders. And they came to it for training and not necessarily to further the goals of TSMO. They know really nothing about TSMO, but it does what we want it to do, which is further those goals of TSMO. So it's worked out well for us. We offered train the trainer, and then we offered the 4-hour basic TIM training, and through train the trainer, it happened at a time where one of our EMS operators was struck on a road, and a firefighter as well. So the entire Wichita Fire Department, within 2 months of our train the trainer, they trained everybody on TIM training, which was, it's over 500 firefighters. So we had a pretty fast reaction out on our roads as far as our clearance time on incidents, just because of the way the fire trucks were now being situated at a scene, and the lessening of the impacts of a full closure of a highway because of scene safety, as was viewed before this training. So it's been a great deal for us, and it has cut our incident management clearance times way down. So it's just been a good thing that really wasn't approached as a TSMO item, as a CMM item. It just happened at the right time, and it fits right in with what we're trying to do to add that reliability value to our road system, and so it's been a great deal.
I guess maybe just to expand slightly, I think that a lot of the TSMO stuff probably does get looked at from like a department's perspective, as we're trying to increase what TSMO is trying to do, but it doesn't necessarily get rolled out as a TSMO initiative. So probably even some of the things we've been doing here in La Crosse with Tom, I've kind of looked at it as a TSMO initiative, even though he's taking the lead and he's running with it, and he's doing some great things related to it. It just falls into a piece of this area to try and help us improve operations overall. So it is interesting how you find different opportunities through MPOs or law enforcement and to just implement things that just may not be termed as TSMO, and they may not know that they're part of a CMM model, but they are creating better efficiencies by collaborating and working together.
Great, thanks. Other thoughts from the group? I'm sure everyone on this call has been, started some conversations with different agencies in your area. How are you approaching some of these different groups, or are there some groups that you haven't been able to really engage with so far, and maybe what have been some challenges around that?
I feel like I'm talking too much now, but this is Angela again. With the performance measure piece, we have performance measures at the DOT level, but not all other agencies necessarily focus on performance measures or understand what the benefits are of those. Those are some of the areas I think we have trouble connecting with other agencies on. And probably business processes too is another area where trying to get our business processes to jive and work towards those similar goals is sometimes hard to get agencies engaged. Not that they won't come to the table and talk about them, but they just don't, it's not a part of their culture, so they don't necessarily connect on to the idea as quickly as maybe someone else who has had it part of their culture would. So I noticed someone was interested in sharing performance measures earlier. I do think that's good to kind of see how people are implementing performance measures and using them for things like reliability, because it seems to be an area that we struggle.
Are there any perspectives on Angela's question? I mean, any other folks? I mean, I know everyone's using performance measures in some realm. Anyone have any thoughts on that, on how you can better use performance measures to either support the business case or to get some additional buy-in from other agencies in the area? Group maybe getting a little worn out, I take it, from the silence, perhaps. I think maybe that's the case. Well, I think seems like the conversation's kind of winding down. I appreciate that folks are maybe getting a little bit worn out, and I think we've covered some good stuff. Les, I did want to go back to you once more. I mean, I know you've been participating in some of these different events with different locations, different agencies. And I'm wondering if you just have any final perspectives or other things that you thought might be good to touch on from a local and regional agency perspective. Les, are you still with us? Well, Les might have stepped away. Okay. Well, so, Les is here. Les, we can't hear you. Hang on one sec. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening with the audio, unfortunately. Well, Yeah. So Les's comment, apologize, Les, I'm not sure why the audio is not working right now, but his comment, the interesting thing is just the difference of the makeup and the regions and the approaches. And yeah, I would echo that. And I think, we've found that through the center too, and in some of the different peer exchanges that we've held, just in terms of understanding some of those differences and I think at the same time how some of those differences are tied together with some similar focus areas. So like performance measures, for instance. I mean, everyone has different uses for performance measures, but I know a lot of times the same travel time reliability performance measures that we've found agencies further north may be using to score the performance associated with winter weather maintenance, snow removal, that kind of a thing. The same agencies or the different agencies down south are using those same kinds of performance measures for things like hurricane, evacuation, and other incident management things surrounding different kinds of weather-related events down south. And so I think that's one real strength of the capability maturity model is just being able to apply those concepts to these different program areas and to these different needs and perspectives from agencies across the country. And Les has some additional comments here, so not sure they're standard learning. Oh,
Steve, can you hear me now?
I heard you. Yes.
I don't know what's going on, but anyway, I did a sound check, and all of a sudden you can hear me. I don't know.
There we go.
So what I think is interesting is regardless of similarities or dissimilarities of the different regions, I think that there's some interesting things that come up that each of the regions can learn from and think about, and I think that's why things like this are so valuable. It reminds me of the regional operations forums where the different people from the different states or regions may not be facing the same problems, but hearing how somebody has solved a related problem really seems to help. And I think that's been, as I've been sitting here, one of the things that I've been most interested in, and especially around the ICM discussion. And even though it's all about the same sorts of things that you might want to put together and the emphasis, regardless of everything else around the corridor, there has to be an emphasis on signal control, and each agency has, or each region has, a little bit different experience with that. And I think those are some things that at least to me have been interesting here. And I think that's not atypical from other similar forums that I've participated in.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that perspective. And again, I think that gets back to this whole idea of how to institutionalize TSMO and how to take some of these different needs and these agencies and regions of different size and complexity, and really be able to use some of these standardized tools and evaluation frameworks to adapt to different scenarios and different technologies and different performance needs. Because quite honestly, Tom, I think you mentioned earlier, I mean, Wichita may not be facing the same scale of issues or congestion as some of the larger metropolitan areas, but from the perspective of the people living in the region, driving in the region, traveling overall, it is still important to be able to address these concerns associated with reliability and in operations and quite frankly, quality of life. And so, I mean, as we've done these kinds of peer exchanges and engage with different agencies, Les, I absolutely agree that hearing some of these different perspectives and these different approaches, but on the same kinds of needs and topic areas, it's reassuring to hear that, you know, it really gives that sense of everyone's in this together kind of mentality. So I hope that that's, if nothing else, one takeaway that folks can get from these kinds of exchanges in the event today is a lot of these issues are shared by agencies around the country. So with that said, let's unpause here. So I'm looking at the clock, and I appreciate everyone's time on the peer exchange today. And I realize this is you know, quite a long period of time, especially for folks, you know, sitting at desks and you know, watching computer monitors and everything. And we've tried to, you know, like I said earlier, try to make this a little bit more engaging than just a 4-hour-long webinar. And I hope that's come through today in terms of the opportunities for engagement and discussion and question and answer on a variety of these different topic areas. Kind of next steps as far as this process goes. So as I said at the beginning, we are recording this session, and we'll make a recording of this available. I'm not sure that we'll get it up today still. It takes some time to convert the video and everything, but I think within the next day or two, we'll get a copy of this uploaded on our YouTube channel, so you'll have access to that for your own reference and for sharing with other folks who may not have been able to participate today. And then we'll also, based on some of the items that have been discussed today, we will be putting together just kind of a high-level proceedings document, just kind of a focus on some of the big picture items. We're going to try to pull in some examples that you all have shared just during the presentation today and during the discussion. And then to that end, if you have other resources or links or documents, websites, etc., that you'd like to share, you know, that can support some of the things we discussed today, go ahead and send those to me, and we can get those integrated in this proceedings document. And then we'll, what we'll do is we'll put together a draft of this within the next 1 to 2 weeks, and we'll send this out for some internal review and probably iterate once or twice, make sure we captured the ideas and the quality of discussion accurately, and then along with the recording, we'll make this available for access on our website as well. Are there any questions from the group or any closing thoughts before we wrap up? And I think we'll end just a few minutes early today.
Steve, it's Athena from NITEC. I think this was a great opportunity to hear what others are doing, so it's good, and I think there's some follow-up that even I'm going to do, just, you know, some outreach to get some examples of other stuff people are doing. So I think this was a great opportunity to hear what others are doing.
Great. Good stuff. Okay. Well, in that case, I'll let everyone go a little bit early today. Again, thanks for your time this afternoon, and look for some follow-up communications from us over the next couple of weeks. So have a good rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.